Chapter 1640. Where did this madman come from? Someone shouted in the air. It was a bird-headed monster with a human body and a pair of rotten black wings on its back. It brought about violent gales and a strong black substance. When it landed, it directly attacked Chu Feng. "Human, you dare to behave atrociously in the darkness continent? Why don't you see where you are?" It stretched out a large hand, and black fog churned, engulfing Chu Feng. Clearly, this was a rotten life-form at the grand cosmos level. Moreover, it had mutated and was very powerful. It didn't care about the rules here at all, and wanted to kill Chu Feng the moment it arrived. Chu Feng really wasn't afraid of this life-form. If it wanted to suppress him, then don't blame him for being impolite. He was going to use the trump card hidden in his body to kill this half-rotten monster. However, before he could do anything, someone made things difficult first. The rotten corpse was originally sulking. Now that it saw a newcomer who didn't follow the rules, it immediately slapped over. With a pack sound after that, there was no after that. This mutated genius who had a strong aura and whose name had shaken the darkness continent many years ago was directly slapped into a pool of blood. Even his Dao bones turned into dregs. Then, blood fog evaporated and he was burned to ashes, leaving nothing behind. As for his soul light, there was no need to think about it. Under the strength of an immortal king at the current stage of the rotten corpse, what else could it protect? Everyone was stunned. Wasn't this outsider too domineering? He killed someone just like that in front of the supreme immortal king Songqing's face? It was one thing for that lunatic to spout nonsense, but no one took it seriously. Could he really kill the strongest seed that walked out from the source of the vile soil? However, this rotten corpse didn't say anything earlier. Now, he directly made a move and casually killed the heaven-blessed lifeforms on their side. He was too tyrannical. "Lord, please kill this fiend. Even though he is an immortal king, he can't be impudent in the darkness continent." Someone shouted, asking Songqing and King Huai to make a move. "Immortal King Tsang, please uphold justice. The declining human race, the defeated heavens, what right do they have to behave atrociously here? Please kill them." An angry roar rang out in the air, asking Songqing to kill the enemy. This was a group of dark lifeforms that had arrived slightly later. "Are you guys courting death too?" The rotten corpse's expression was unkind as he stared at everyone. Crackle! In midair, it was as if they were dumplings. Even though there were dark true immortals among them, they still couldn't endure the gaze of the decaying corpses. They almost all cracked apart, falling onto the ground, almost directly exploding. When an immortal king was enraged, how could beings of lower cultivation realms be able to withstand it? If it weren't for the tyrant blood clan's immortal king Songqing releasing his domain to block the corpses, these people would have either died or their cultivation foundations would have been destroyed. They weren't celestial kings, and if their essences really collapsed, then there would be no future to speak of. These people's faces instantly turned deathly pale, and they didn't dare to say anything else. Songqing said, "Let me introduce them to you. These two once lived alongside the three heavenly emperors for a very long period of time. Their names shook the primordial era. In the great era war that followed, they also rampaged through the world, killing in and out of the dark universe, massacring many strange and powerful races." He had no choice but to explain himself. Otherwise, if someone spoke carelessly and it spread to the depths of the vile earth, there would be Dao ancestors who would have a negative impression of him, and then he would be in danger. The city immediately fell silent, and no one dared to say anything else. A person's reputation was like a tree's shadow. Even though many eras had passed, the legend of the three heavenly emperors going on a blood-soaked massacre back then was still circulating in the darkness continent. This was especially so for some old fellows who had survived from that era. They were even more astonished. Some people looked at the corpses and the dog emperor, gradually overlapping their images with the figures of the past. They finally recognized them. Back then, there was a gigantic black dog with surging blood chi and a head that reached beyond the sky. With a single swipe of its paw, it could kill an immortal king. It was simply too terrifying, causing many strange races to feel that it was like a nightmare. Also, this corpse was dressed like a Taoist priest back then. He actually killed his way out from the path of reincarnation in the ancient underworld, intercepting the true spirits of countless dark creatures who wanted to reincarnate. When he became ruthless, not only did he kill the living, but he also acted against the dead. He dug out the graves of all the strange Tao ancestors who had died in the land of darkness, not even leaving a bone or a strand of hair behind. The Mad Dog and the Evil Tao were too famous in the Darkness continent back then. Song Qing's meaning was very clear. It wasn't that he didn't want to help them. It was just that the foundations of these two were too strong. From the bottom of his heart, he really wanted to kill the Dog Emperor and the corpses. However, he was a little afraid. He was worried that the three heavenly emperors would return sooner or later and deal with him at that time. Hence, he had been enduring silently and didn't dare to act out. Next, some other life forms came one after another. They were all extremely strong and were all mutated species. Some of them had strange appearances that caused Song Qing and the others to involuntarily frown. In order to pursue extreme strength, these life forms had received an ominous baptism too early, causing their bodies to undergo shocking changes. There were monsters with tumors all over their bodies. Each tumor was a tiny head, and they were lumpy, causing one's scalp to turn numb. It was easy for them to develop phobia. There were also monsters with pus flowing all over their bodies, emitting a foul stench. However, their bodies had transformed into tens of strange bones. Beneath their rotting skin were extremely tough bones that were close to the ancestors of the strange races. Facing these mutated geniuses, even Chu Feng felt a little helpless. He really didn't want to use his fists to come into contact with their flesh. In the end, he couldn't bear it any longer. He took out the diamond chakram and attacked indiscriminately. The wristband that was infused with all sorts of gold returned to its original state. However, once it was taken out, it would be shrouded in chaotic chi, and beams of light would surge into the sky. With a boom, the diamond chakram enlarged, and a black hole formed within it, devouring everything, including the great Tao runes, order laws, and so on. The mutated geniuses and those indescribable monsters roared angrily and resisted, but they couldn't avoid being sucked in. All of them were shaken into pieces and turned into blood mist before being incinerated by the Tao flames. In the end, only some ashes of these monsters scattered out. Their bodies and spirits were completely destroyed. Geniuses from all over the Darkness continent kept rushing over. However, if they couldn't win, they still couldn't win. Facing a freak like Chu Feng, they were simply sending themselves to death. Chu Feng didn't show any mercy when he encountered these completely dark lifeforms. He killed until heads rolled and the blood of geniuses dyed the ground red. On this day, Chu Feng killed 94 top geniuses from the Darkness continent, shaking the world. In the dark cosmos, in the vast and strange land, the middle and younger generations all knew that a devil king had arrived. He was even more ominous and bizarre than them, massacring geniuses, and no one was a match for him. You are very strong, but you barged into our pure land and wantonly challenged us. This has touched our bottom line. Today, there will naturally be someone who will kill you. Just you wait. Not only did the middle and younger generations feel their blood run cold, but even creatures at the level of the Darkness True Immortal felt a strong sense of discomfort, feeling extremely anxious. There were so many mutated geniuses, but until now, no one could withstand 10 punches from Chu Feng. Many of them would be blasted apart by him the moment they went up, their blood splattering on the martial arena. In the end, even the expressions of the immortal kings turned gloomy, almost unable to hold it in any more. Something like this actually happened. A single person dominated the entire darkness continent's younger generations. No one was a match for him. If news of this got out, the immortal kings in this region would all feel extremely passive. They would feel that they were useless. It was because right now, the creatures in the territories they ruled were too weak. Song Qin couldn't sit still anymore. He sent people to ask if one of the most powerful seeds who came from the source of the strangeness was about to arrive. Miss Menglan has arrived. Someone cried out in alarm. What? Even the darkness true immortals here were shocked. This was someone they didn't expect. They had no idea when she came to the darkness continent. Menglan's background was extremely shocking. She was the descendant of a Dao ancestor, her bloodline inheritance causing her to undergo a mutation early on. Now, she even began to return, stepping on the path of returning to her true self. Her race was almost wiped out by the Dao ancestor and the others. In some great eras, she became a race that even our servants despised. Now, she still dares to step on this land? This is the land of a resplendent supreme civilization. The one who came was a woman. Her scarlet hair fluttered in the wind, and even her eyes emitted a cold red light. She carried a wild and dangerous aura, extremely powerful. As soon as she arrived, she swept her gaze over everyone and looked down on Chu Feng. Her words brought up the past, opening up the wounds of the all heavens, causing the bloody past to be recalled once again. Was there anger in Chu Feng's heart? Of course there was, but it wasn't to the extent of erupting immediately. He had experienced too much, and he had long understood what the strange races and darkness creatures were like. It was precisely because their ancestors were greater than them and hadn't been wiped out since ancient times. They occupied the advantage for a long time, nurturing their overweening personality and attitude. If the all heavens wanted to change, they could only cripple them, using practical actions to explain the truth, telling them how to behave. This was the supreme profound meaning. Towards these strange races whose hands were stained with blood and remnant souls, even if they were now packaged as a brilliant advanced civilization, the savagery and bloodthirstiness in their bones wouldn't change. The only way was to destroy them. Why aren't you saying anything? Are you thinking of those old matters? Your lowliness, the reverence that should have been branded in your bones, has it finally appeared? The red-haired woman, Menglan, spoke. She still had a cold and arrogant attitude that made people feel disgusted. Chu Feng naturally wouldn't be angered. Now that he was strong enough, he had the confidence and calmness to use his actions to teach her how to behave. He calmly said, "Your ancestors were very strong and also very cruel. They had once slaughtered the world and now, they've become your capital to show off? Tell me how much you're worth. Moreover, whose ancestors haven't been rich before? Don't you remember the time when the 3 Sky Emperors bathed the dark universe in blood? If you've forgotten, some of the seniors here have already dug up your Dao ancestors' grave. Not even a rotten bone was left, and they were burned as firewood. Not every evolved civilization can be evergreen. If we talk about the era of that rising era, weren't you all still lying dormant?" He forcefully dug up the ancient reincarnation paths, and many people hid in rat holes and didn't come out. Chu Feng was openly slashing her face in front of her, as well as slapping the faces of many dark creatures. Everyone's faces were ashen. Only the decayed corpse stroked his beard. This was the first time he found Chu Feng pleasing to the eye. There was nothing more to say. Meng Lan's expression was cold as she directly attacked. Her entire body was covered in scarlet beams of light, tearing apart the heaven and earth as she charged toward Chu Feng. Chu Feng didn't spoil her at all. What young lord? What descendant of the Dao ancestor? If he could kill her, he absolutely wouldn't let her live. With a boom, the two collided, causing their bodies to sway. But soon, the red-haired woman was forced back a few steps. With a single strike, Chu Feng had already gauged her strength. Honestly speaking, she was indeed very strong. In terms of ranking within the same realm, she could stand shoulder to shoulder with some of the Tao children of the high heavens. But if they were at the same realm, she definitely couldn't stand shoulder to shoulder with Luo Tianxian. Chu Feng knew what was going on. He began to go all out, pushing his power to the limit and suppressing her in all aspects. If it was a normal fight, Chu Feng would need some time to defeat her. But now, each of his attacks was a life and death struggle. They were all trump cards, forcing Menglan to go all out. She couldn't retreat even half a step, or else she would lose the initiative. However, this kind of battle was extremely bitter for Menglan. After several collisions, her arms were about to explode. Her palms were badly mangled, and some of her finger bones were broken. Chu Feng wanted to intimidate and end the battle quickly, forcing her to go all out with every strike. If she dared to retreat, she would have to face his final attack. Finally, Meng Lan's hands exploded. It was a tragic sight. With a bang, Chu Feng's feet glowed, accompanied by a wheel of light. He kicked Meng Lan's chest, piercing through her whole body and breaking her into two. Everyone was stunned. How long had it been? Including kicks and fists, it had only been 13 strikes. Then, Meng Lan's body was broken by that madman's kick. Her proud figure was destroyed, broken into two. That scene was simply unbearable. The people of the Dark Continent were stunned. This was a direct descendant of the Tao ancestor, a graceful and famous beauty. How could she end up like this? Chu Feng didn't hesitate. His fist glowed, driving the wheel of light forward. The wonderful 9 treasures technique condensed with his fist, and he directly punched forward. "Stop!" many of the rotting monsters shouted. Some dark true immortals even tried to stop him. Even Song Qing and King Huai's expressions changed. After a slight hesitation, they chose to make a move, wanting to stop everything. However, the Dog Emperor and the rotting corpse were also watching. They were more straightforward than anyone else. They had already taken the initiative to attack, blocking at the very front. A terrifying celestial light screen rose up, blocking everyone's offensive spells. Boom! As Chu Feng struck out with a blinding light, Meng Lan's mournful scream was also accompanied. "Ah!" she directly exploded, blown up by Chu Feng. Both her body and spirit were destroyed, and only a mist of blood was left. The scene was silent. A direct descendant of the Tao ancestor was killed just like that. "You!" Some dark true immortals were furious. This young madman in front of them was too domineering and ruthless. Even the descendants of the Tao ancestor had no way to survive if they encountered him. Chu Feng said, "I'm sorry. I was a bit too heavy just now and couldn't control myself." She disappeared. What could the crowd say? Even though many of them wanted to skin him alive, could they save Meng Lan? Many people growled. They couldn't hold it in anymore. If the Dog Emperor and the rotting corpse weren't here, they would definitely rush forward and kill this madman with boundless potential. 14 punches. She can be considered a very powerful monster. "It's rare for her to receive so many punches from me," Chu Feng said. This time, the dark creatures were really going to explode. Even Song Qing, who didn't want to have a falling out with the Dog Emperor, couldn't hold back his surging anger. The rotting corpse was speechless. He really wanted to tell him, "Can you stop talking? Every word you say is poisonous. Even I didn't need a beating like you back then." For a moment, whether it was the strange races that walked out from the vile land or the dark creatures that were baptized by the ominous power, they were all restless and incomparably angry. However, they had to admit that this madman was indeed incomparably powerful. He was far beyond everyone's imagination. Even though Meng Lan couldn't be selected as the strongest seed of the vile land, she was still extremely powerful. Few could match her. After all, there were only a few strongest seeds among the strange races. It was too difficult to occupy that position. Just as everyone was about to explode and vent their anger, a person silently appeared in the field. He had a head full of silver hair and a tall figure. He was a man full of heroic spirit. Even his pupils were glowing with silvery white light. His appearance instantly made many people at the scene quiet down. The restlessness gradually subsided. Who's here? Which race is he from? Even the people from the strange races were whispering and asking the people around them. Based on their intuition, they knew that the person who came was extraordinary. Naturally, it's Lord Qi Yuan. He's a true seed-level creature from the vile land. Someone said in a low voice. This was the person Song Qing mentioned. He had recently traveled to the Dark Continent. The unrivaled person of this generation in the vile land, Qi Yuan, had personally arrived. I just killed a descendant of the Tao ancestor. What about you? Could it be that you're a descendant of the supreme bloodline, the Tao ancestor? Chu Feng said. No, I rose from an ordinary creature. I have nothing to do with the bloodline of the Tao ancestor, and I have nothing to do with the powerhouses of the Tao ancestor, Qi Yuan said. This is troublesome. It seems that you're very strong, but I promise to end the battle within 20 punches. Chu Feng frowned. To be able to evolve to this stage from an ordinary creature, this person must have gone through hundreds of battles. Compared to the descendants of the Tao ancestor, who had a high innate starting point and unparalleled scripture inheritance, he was even more difficult to deal with. If we don't talk about our standpoint, you're very powerful. However, you and I are born to oppose each other. I have no choice but to kill you. Qi Yuan said, just like how you can't get used to the aura on my body, the so-called auspicious energy emitted by the various races in the heavens is inauspicious to me. It's decaying, a turbid aura that needs to be purified. Chu Feng was speechless. Then, he nodded and said, Our standpoint is different and our views are different. It's understandable that there's a difference in perception. Then, in order to respect you, I'll beat you to death since my thoughts are similar to yours. Boom. The two of them didn't say much. They immediately attacked each other. Obviously, it was impossible for Chu Feng to use complicated moves. He immediately used his strongest trump card, the ultimate fist, the wonderful 9 treasures technique, and the golden characters on the stone jar. The silver-haired Qi Yuan was the same. The bones all over his body made sonorous sounds. He actually had a body of strange bones. He had undergone a great nirvana, and his strength was world-shocking. The two of them erupted and collided continuously. Blood splattered everywhere. Some belonged to the enemy, and some belonged to Chu Feng himself. Their bodies were tattered in the shortest time possible. Were it not for the fact that Chu Feng had diligently cultivated the indestructible scripture, comprehended Luo Tianxian's soul light technique, and comprehended the Emperor's scripture that Yao Yao gave him, it was hard to say whether he would live or die today. Even so, he was still incomparably strenuous. He used all his methods, but there were still some broken bones on his body, and his flesh was about to explode. However, the silver-haired Qi Yuan didn't feel good either. Just now, his body had been broken by Chu Feng. 2 parts of his body fell to the ground, and strange true blood flowed out. Fortunately, he was strong enough to quickly reform the uncanny bone Tao body. Bang! The last attack happened to be the 20th punch. Chu Feng had sublimated to the limit and surpassed his own ceiling. He fused all the wonderful techniques into one. He himself was the 9-colored wheel of light, the ultimate fist, and the golden characters. Everything was carried on his flesh and soul light. With his body as the wheel, the fist, and the Tao, he bombarded Qi Yuan's body. Half of Chu Feng's body was ruined. His flesh was badly mutilated, and his Tao bones were broken. He was truly miserable. However, Qi Yuan was even more miserable. His whole body disintegrated inch by inch before he completely exploded. Even his soul light was the same. Within the disintegrating strange bones and the collapsing flesh, the flames of grand sky and the flames of ancient Aeon appeared and burned. Qi Yuan couldn't help but roar, and his soul light rapidly dimmed. In the end, he was defeated and died. both his body and soul vanished. In just a short moment, one of the strongest seeds that walked out of the source of the strange, wretched earth died, just like that. Song Qing's scalp went numb. There were only a few seeds in total, and they were to be cultivated as Tao ancestors in the future. They might even be the embryonic form of the future Tao ancestor. In the end, Qi Yuan died. He was blown up alive by that madman. 20 punches, no more, no less. With a whoosh, the dog emperor and the rotten corpse took Chu Feng and ran away. They teleported and disappeared completely. Don't chase. Song Qing, I'm warning you. Don't play any tricks. Otherwise, I'll definitely slap you to death when we get back. Before leaving, the dog emperor even threatened him. Its voice surged in the vast sky, but its body had long since disappeared. Along the way, they entered the depths of the dark continent. Along the way, Chu Feng constantly revolved the scripture to restore his own tattered body and soul light. It made his corporeal body even more tenacious, and his soul light even more condensed. The dog emperor and the decayed corpse guarded him outside a valley. Chu Feng began to plant that special seed. There was a stone jar at the side that carried the universe-level mutant soil. It emitted a hazy light mist that enveloped this place. The outside world actually couldn't see through the actual situation. A pitch-black plant grew and then bloomed. It scattered dense mist that gradually submerged Chu Feng. He revolved the breathing technique, and his mouth and nose were full of mysterious mist. That was the unfathomable pollen. He refined it, and it resonated with his flesh and soul light. His entire corporeal body was shining brilliantly. He was evolving toward the universe level to resist the corrosion of decay. He was undergoing nirvana and realizing the transition of life. An incomparably powerful and terrifying special universe-level creature was about to be born here. Chapter 1641. In the gloomy land, a pitch-black plant produced a mystical flower. It was somewhat strange, but it appeared even more divine. Pollen sprinkled down and wisps of mist entered Chu Feng's body. He circulated his breathing technique. Not only was his mouth and nose absorbing the pollen, but even the pores of his entire body were absorbing it. His soul light was also breathing in the mysterious pollen particles with a special rhythm. Chu Feng was transforming intensely. The bones in his body emitted a thunderous sound, and his internal organs even had the sound of chanting scriptures. His soul light and the great Tao resonated together. This was a kind of astonishing great nirvana. At this level, his strength was skyrocketing at an extreme speed. Great cosmos rank. He really walked in. This was a terrifying dividing line. Only by stepping into this level could one be considered to be able to look down on all living things and be considered a high-level evolver. Bang! A large area of Tao patterns appeared on the surface of Chu Feng's body. There were dark, gray, gold, and deathly white ones. They were actually all constructed from strange substances. As expected, it was easy to be contaminated by this kind of thing while evolving on this dark land. But at this moment, Chu Feng also saw part of their essence. It was as if a few strange creatures were standing tall and immortal at the end of the long river of history. Was that the source of inauspiciousness, the primogenitor of the strange creatures? He even vaguely saw a few coffins faintly discernible in his trance. Slash! Chu Feng growled. A 9-colored light wheel rushed out from his body and slashed at the various strange Tao patterns on his body. It was impossible for him to accept the corrosion of this kind of substance. Dreadful wails and weeping sounds came from all around him. It was as if there were ghosts at the end of the road corroding everything downstream from the source of the long river of time. Chu Feng encountered trouble. He was evolving here, and indeed, he had a preliminary understanding of part of the mysteries of the source of the strangeness. The mysterious seed germinated, took root, and blossomed. Through the pollen, he analyzed part of the true meaning of the source, allowing Chu Feng to have an astonishing harvest. But the world was balanced. Touching and understanding even a little bit of this would mean facing the most serious corrosion. Chu Feng's flesh and blood began to rot, his bones began to mutate, his blood turned pitch black, his pupils turned silvery white, his hair turned yellow, and then began to emit a faint golden luster. This made him feel like he was better off dead than alive. Even his soul was being corroded. There was black blood, gray fog, golden matter, and a deathly pale face. All of these things were pressing toward him, wanting to fuse into his blood and return to his soul light. Get lost! He roared angrily. His entire body shone as he chanted the Emperor's scripture. Then, he began to carve the golden characters recorded on the stone jar between his bones and blood. He was trying his best to purify himself. He wanted to return to his true self and didn't need these strange Tao patterns. If the living creatures of the Darkness continent were to see Chu Feng's transformation, they'd definitely be incomparably shocked. Wasn't this the baptism they dreamed of? Moreover, this was suspected to be a supreme baptism. This was because Chu Feng's bones were mutating, and his entire body was transforming into crafty bones. This was a characteristic of the primogenitor when he was young. Other than that, his blood was also mutating. His eyes, his hair, and so on, all of them corresponded to different extreme inauspicious forces. All of this indicated that the black blood, golden matter, silver inauspiciousness, gray fog, and so on had all found him and were all going to be bestowed with a supreme baptism. However, this was what Chu Feng wanted to abandon. He didn't need them at all. He only wanted to be his true self. This was an arduous resistance and an incomparably terrifying torture. If ordinary living creatures were to be baptized by a supreme baptism and entangled by all sorts of strange Tao patterns, it would be very hard for them to turn back. Chu Feng didn't give up. Since he had taken the initiative to enter the Darkness continent to undergo a transformation, he had to gain something from it. He had to understand the strangeness and analyze the inauspiciousness. If he were to completely throw himself into it, that would be a joke. Something's wrong. He's mutated and most likely stepped onto a path of no return. In the end, he'll become a seed-level living creature like the source of the vile soil, or even a seed among seeds. Outside the valley, the Dog Emperor's countenance changed as he sensed that something was amiss. Although he couldn't see the strange fog or the hazy glowing fog emitted by the stone jar, he could clearly sense that the entire valley was drowned by extremely ominous matter. However, it could clearly sense that the entire valley was drowned by extremely inauspicious matter. Tao patterns circulated, appearing extremely complicated and profound. The decayed corpse said, "Didn't we already make mental preparations? Failure is very normal. This means that he ultimately isn't the kind of person you and I are hoping for." That's right. We hope and long for a seed on the level of Lu Jin to appear. Normally speaking, it wouldn't be possible for such a life form to be born even after several epochs. Failure is the norm. It's just that we feel a little sorry for him, watching him take this step and step onto a path of no return. The Dog Emperor actually had times where his heart would soften. He was sighing here and there. How many epochs have passed? We've also excavated heaven-defying life forms one after another, but haven't we all failed? This is very normal. The decayed corpse was also very gloomy. It would be abnormal if he had succeeded. The Dog Emperor lowered his head and sighed. I saw that he could kill a Tao ancestor, and felt that he had a great secret on him. That's why I allowed him to come to the Darkness continent to evolve. It's a pity. I've let down the young man. 9 Taoist silhouettes appeared in the distance. They were a little silent and then they turned and disappeared. Clearly, these old fellows all knew the consequences of coming here. However, they still wanted to give it a try and see if there would be a seed on the level of Lu Jin. If Chu Feng knew the truth, he would definitely want to beat them to death. Things were far more terrifying than what he had understood. The two worlds bore the weight of completely opposing evolutionary paths. Running to the enemy's land to evolve was purely courting death. Of course, this was also the harshest trial. Could even be called a doomsday trial. It was no longer a trial, but a true trial of death. To the Dog Emperor, the decayed corpse, and the other old fellows, there was only one goal in nurturing newbies. They hoped to excavate a seed at the Lu Jin level. Otherwise, even if one became an immortal king or evolved into a Tao ancestor, it would be meaningless in the end. For an entire day and night, Chu Feng was in torment, fighting against all sorts of ominous Tao patterns. He didn't want to mutate. Although he's mutated, he's still suffering and persevering. He hasn't completely fallen into the ominous domain. The Dog Emperor was astonished and revealed a hopeful gaze. I think there's a chance. After all, he's a young freak who killed a Tao ancestor. He must have his own secret. We just have to keep waiting. Chu Feng endured for an entire 3 days and 3 nights. His blood energy was almost exhausted, and his soul light was exhausted. Only then did he completely destroy all of the strange Tao patterns. Then, the sound of the immortal scripture rang out, and the secret technique of stabilizing the soul operated. His entire body erupted with light as he began to recover his true self. Additionally, the particles that fell from the pollen earlier were refined by him and fused into his flesh and soul. Now they were activated one step further, causing his blood energy and soul light to flourish. Chu Feng had revived. His flesh and blood were sparkling. The so-called strange bones had been crushed and expelled by him. His true bones were reborn, his blood was purified, and the ominous Tao patterns were burned. The strange power was completely destroyed. The Lu Jin level is actually so dangerous. Fortunately, I made it through. Chu Feng got up and looked at the ground. There were filthy traces everywhere. There were bone dregs, terrifying black-colored blood, and remnants of golden substances. One could imagine what he had experienced during these 3 days and 3 nights. It was easy to say, but in reality, these 3 days were simply too terrifying for Chu Feng to recall. They were even more terrifying than the various life and death battles he had encountered. He would rather kill 10 strange seed-rank lifeforms like Qi Yuan than experience what he had experienced just now. Transparent inside and out, spotless, flawless, and flawless. However, I still feel like I'm lacking something. Chu Feng looked inside his body. He hadn't become a rotten Lu Jin level lifeform, but he still felt that something was off. He looked inside himself, and finally, he sensed something. It was the small gray millstone inside his body. Chu Feng's eyes flashed. With a boom, the patterns of the great Tao interweaved as he directly tore this millstone apart. Now, he himself could obliterate all the strange substances and didn't need this millstone. In the end, this was forged with the gray substance as the foundation and the ominous power as the primer. If this thing were to remain dormant for a long time, it was unknown what it would become in the end. Let's refine an external millstone. Chu Feng made a decision and recast the torn millstone outside his body. His flesh and soul light had to be maintained absolutely pure. He couldn't allow the existence of those strange foreign substances. This time, Chu Feng felt that his body and mind were truly transparent. His soul light and flesh fused perfectly and flawlessly. He felt that his strength had increased by a large margin. He was a Lu Jin level lifeform, and most importantly, he didn't show any signs of decay. He was different from the others. The others who had just entered this domain were indescribable and very terrifying. They needed to endure for a long time, and only if they could advance one day would they be able to solve the problem of decay. However, Chu Feng couldn't understand that his previous decay and strange changes were completely different from what other Lu Jin level lifeforms had faced. He had received several kinds of strange baptisms, and they were of the highest level. Any one of them could allow him to give birth to perfect strange bones, dark blood, and so on. With a cautious sound, the black tree behind him broke, withered, and collapsed. With a loud rumble, it disintegrated and turned into ashes. After that, a dang sound rang out as an item dropped down. It was a large black sword that was half the height of a human and smashed onto the ground. It was dark and extremely heavy. It didn't seem very sharp, but after Chu Feng picked it up, he slashed it gently and directly sliced through the void. Chu Feng felt how terrifying this large sword was. He liked it very much and was very satisfied with the seed's form in his hand. After that, he put away the stone jar and prepared to leave this place. At this moment, swishing sounds rang out as the Dog Emperor and the rotten corpse rushed over. They assessed Chu Feng from head to toe and revealed strange looks on their faces. "Seniors, I didn't expect it to be so difficult to evolve in the Darkness continent. This time around, I've really suffered a great sin, and I can't bear to recall it." Chu Feng poured out his heart. This was the first time he had struggled during evolution and hovered between life and death. "What a miracle, you actually didn't die and made it through," the Dog Emperor mumbled. It looked left and right, wanting nothing more than to peel off his skin and see through him. The rotten corpse looked at the filth on the ground, the terrifying and ominous remnants, as well as the aura of the great Tao runes after they were destroyed. He was also quite shocked. He nodded and said, "Truly, not simple." Chu Feng was startled. After that, he stared at them, revealing an incomparably dangerous gaze. "You guys already knew and even thought that I might die. No, you guys already knew that there was no way I would survive?" He was infuriated. This damnable dog and that old son of his who liked to steal and dig up graves, they knew the inside story? Yet they didn't tell him. They were truly despicable. Chu Feng was about to explode. He felt that he had been deceived. At this moment, Jiu Daoi and Gu Qing also appeared. They looked at Chu Feng with a strange look in their eyes. "Don't be angry. The two of them are indeed possessed and have entered a state of cultivation deviation. They want nothing more than to immediately find a seed that can allow them to become existences at the end of the road. This is because they have experienced too much. Their hearts are filled with fear, and they are worried about the future. Of course, it's not for themselves, but they are afraid that the heavens will collapse overnight." Jiu Daoi explained. Moreover, he told Chu Feng that he was not far away. Even if the worst result happened, he could still save his life. Chu Feng's gaze became increasingly unkind. These old monsters couldn't beat them, otherwise they would have been locked in the furnace of time and cremated in half before being rescued. The Dog Emperor was scared, and the rotten corpse was also trembling. They immediately looked at Chu Feng with vigilance. "Seniors, don't worry. I can't activate the cremation furnace right now," Chu Feng said. What did he mean? When you can activate it in the future, you want to use the sparks on us. The Dog Emperor and the rotten corpse were immediately infuriated. They had seen this brat cremate a Tao ancestor with their own eyes. Was he starting to threaten them? Surprisingly, the Dog Emperor endured in the end and didn't act up. Moreover, his dog face brightened up, and he gradually cracked a wide smile, which made Chu Feng's hair stand on end. "I don't want to eat dog meat. No, I don't want to use sparks on you." Chu Feng quickly corrected himself. "Little brat, you're thinking about eating dog meat?" The Dog Emperor almost jumped up again. "But in the end," he said amiably, "everything I did was to choose an emperor seed. It was indeed inappropriate, and I'm sorry to have offended you. But don't worry, after going through the hell-level death trial, you've already entered my sight. From now on, regarding you, regarding your family, regarding your relatives, this emperor will definitely do his best to protect their lives." Chu Feng was a little flustered. This dog was suddenly being nice to him, which made him feel uneasy. This was an inauspicious dog, very unlucky. "Senior, don't be nice to me, and don't think highly of me. It's too scary. When you smile, I seem to see an ominous sign, as if a strange ancestor has opened its bloody mouth at me." "You damned brat, How can you say that? The dog emperor wanted to bite him. It really wanted to say, is it easy for me? I've been deceiving people all this way, and I finally want to protect them with all my heart. But I'm being treated as a wolf with the heart of a dog, no, the lungs of an immortal emperor. In the end, it said in a low voice, I'll tell you the truth from the bottom of my heart. I have some trump cards, some methods, and I can use some of the power that the 3 celestial emperors left behind for me. After hearing this, Chu Feng was instantly moved. It's impossible to predict what the future will be like, but I feel that the heavens will most likely fall into an eternal abyss of darkness, and I might be able to save some people's lives during the doomsday. I can't guarantee everything, but there's always some hope. Do you want your relatives to have a chance of survival? The dog emperor looked at him. What do you want me to do? Chu Feng asked. He was very clear that there was no free lunch in this world, especially when this dog never suffered a loss. The dog emperor was extremely serious, and it was very different from before. It said in a low voice, Don't think of me as such a profiteer. This time, I have high hopes for you, and I only hope that you don't have any worries. No matter what happens, you have to survive, and you have to evolve by all means possible. Even if you fall into a wretched land, or sink into hell without a glimmer of light, don't give up. Don't despair, and think of ways to continue evolving. Chu Feng's heart sank. This dog didn't have high hopes for the future? Nine Daoi's expression was also wooden. Clearly, they had a premonition at this point. The decayed corpse also said, Even if all of us old fellows die, after 1,000 tribulations and hundreds of tribulations, I hope that you can still return, appear in this world, and be strong enough. I hope that in the future you can really reach the end of the road, find those people, and help them. The dog emperor suddenly became sad, and tears actually appeared in its old eyes. This sudden turn of events left Chu Feng at a loss as to what to do. This dog actually had such emotions. Those people have disappeared for a long time, and they still haven't returned. I feel that they must be in an incomparably difficult situation. They are most likely fighting alone, and they need someone to help them. The dog emperor growled, its eyes filled with hot tears. Clearly, its relationship with the 3 sky emperors was too deep, and it was afraid that something would happen to them. There is also that person. He might have encountered an unimaginably great enemy and can't return. The dog emperor said again. According to its guess, those people who came out from the heavens were all fighting in dangerous situations of life and death, and they needed help from those who came later. However, many years had passed, and many great eras had passed. There were no stronger people rising up from the heavens, and they couldn't help them. Nine Dao was also moved. After such a long time, there was still no one at the end of the road that came out from the strange, wretched land. It was most likely that there was really something holding them back, and they were stopped by someone. Who could it be? It could be imagined. Chu Feng said in a low voice, If I had that kind of achievement and was strong enough, I would naturally fight my way out, slaughter my way into the wretched land, overturn their lair, and tear apart their Dao fruit. Unfortunately, time waited for no one. He still had a long way to go, but there was no more time. It's fine. You have to maintain your stability. Don't let the collapse of the heavens and the fall of the world affect your Dao heart. No matter what happens, you have to live. The dog emperor warned him, promising to protect the people around him. This was to make him feel at ease and to advance bravely. It could be seen that this dog had really placed all its hopes on him. It was obvious that it was completely in despair, and there was no other way. The decayed corpse also sighed. After so many years, it really wasn't easy to find a seed. It hoped that Chu Feng could rise up in the future, and go support those who were fighting in unknown places. Remember, you must rise up in the future. You must carry the flag and go help them. Don't be too late. I'm afraid they won't be able to wait until that moment, the dog emperor warned again. They're treating you as a young emperor. There's endless sorrow and bitterness in their hearts, and they hope to find someone to entrust them to. They're entrusting their affairs, and they can't endure it anymore. Jiudao sighed. The Dog Emperor growled, "Don't worry, I'll do my best to live. I'll fight to see that day, to see the once invincible person return." It didn't even have confidence in itself, and it made everyone feel oppressed. Actually, that girl named Yao Yao isn't bad, but she received the Empress inheritance, so I can't interfere too much. The Dog Emperor actually had another goal. This time it was very honest. Yao Yao had cultivated in seclusion in the foreign realm for 500 years. When she came out and achieved the great cosmos realm Dao fruit, it had also brought her into the Dark Continent. However, Yao Yao didn't walk the pollen path. She had fused several systems, and the last time she came here, there was no strange misfortune. She wasn't corroded, and her entire body was flawless, so the Dog Emperor couldn't see through it. I'm optimistic about the two of you, and you've both entered the great cosmos realm. Do you want to take advantage of this opportunity to have children? If you advance any further, it'll really be difficult to have descendants. The Dog Emperor's style changed abruptly. It grinned and said, "Leave behind a descendant. Who knows, it might be an even more powerful seed. I'm optimistic about your descendants. In the field of nurturing descendants, no one understands it better than me." It stuck out its tongue, and its eyes revealed a divine radiance. It had a longing look on its face. Chu Feng was dumbstruck. Just now, its eyes were filled with hot tears, and now it actually had this kind of idea. Its train of thought was too strange. "She and I aren't Dao companions," Chu Feng hurriedly corrected. Even the decayed corpse opened its mouth and said, "You and Zhou Shi are husband and wife, but if one day the world falls, the one who can accompany you to the end and enter the supreme realm with you might only be Yao Yao." Although they aren't husband and wife, this kind of relationship of advancing hand in hand is more like a true Dao companion on the path of evolution. "I won't allow anything to happen to Zhou Shi," Chu Feng said resolutely. Then, he looked at the Dog Emperor. "Don't worry, unless I die." The Dog Emperor patted his chest in guarantee. He had placed all his hopes on Chu Feng because he was in despair. "Remember, we see you as the young emperor. One day, even if the world falls silent and everyone dies, don't let yourself sink into depravity. You must live and carry the banner," the decayed corpse said solemnly. To the side, Gu Qing was speechless. Even the young emperor had come out. How pessimistic was the current celestial court, and how certain it was that it would collapse. Gu Qing felt that he should also make arrangements. He couldn't wait until the day he collapsed. Bah! He suddenly came to a realization and wanted to beat himself up. Why did he feel like he was going to collapse? Suddenly, Chu Feng became somewhat bashful and revealed a rare expression of embarrassment. He asked Nine Daoi, the Dog Emperor, and the decayed corpse for guidance. "Seniors, do you think I can have descendants at this realm?" He had been thinking about this matter all along, but it had been fruitless for 1,000 years. And now, his cultivation level had increased again. Was he going to have some regrets in his life? He knew that Zhou Shi also wanted to have a child, but the two of them didn't have any descendants. Nine Daoi said, "In theory, it's not too late. You've just entered the cosmic realm, and now stand at the peak of humanity. You're not a true immortal level being yet, so you should be able to give birth." "I always thought that the cosmic realm could kill immortals, but I'm not?" Chu Feng was shocked. The Dog Emperor said, "You walk the path of pollen, and your body hasn't rotted. You're special in the cosmic realm, and in theory, you can wrestle with true immortals, but your chances of winning aren't high." The decayed corpse added, "When the cosmic realm or ultimate realm beings reach the later stages, they can walk shoulder to shoulder with immortals and kill them. Only then can they be considered immortal-level beings." Gu Qing said, "If someone reaches the end of the cosmic realm and ultimate realm at the same time and becomes a cosmic realm being, They'll be a rare mortal immortal. Chu Feng knew that on the path of pollen, rotting cosmic realm beings and ultimate realm beings were two different states of the same realm. In theory, after reaching the extreme, they could eventually become one. How strong was a mortal immortal that it was considered rare? Chu Feng asked. In the end of days, the world dried up, and it's very difficult to cultivate. It's impossible for immortals to be born in the mortal world. Under such circumstances, the difficulty of becoming an immortal is unimaginable. But if someone defies the heavens and achieves such a Tao fruit, they'll be ridiculously powerful. Such an immortal is even stronger than the peak true immortals that people speak of. But they're still inferior to immortal kings. After hearing their words, Chu Feng completely understood. Let's go. Nine Dao said. They'd been delayed in the Dark Continent for too long, and he was also afraid that something might happen. Chu Feng said, I want to find the strongest cosmic realm among the creatures of darkness, or even the dark true immortal for a spar. It'd be best if the seeds of the bizarre races come out again, and I'll destroy a few more of them. The decayed corpse said, I say, save it. You won't stop until you get the Tao ancestor and those big guys from the source of the bizarre. Be careful. Let's go back earlier. Gu Qing nodded and strongly suggested that they hurry on their way back. All right then. Chu Feng was reluctant to leave, and he added, I'm worried about the future. Since the worlds might fall this time, if those seed-level creatures grow into Tao ancestors in the future, they'll pose a great threat to the worlds that might recover in the next era and reproduce again. Although he spoke calmly, if one were to think about it, it would be exceptionally heavy. It meant that everything's ending had already been decided. This era, the people of this era, and all the races would be buried. In the end, nothing would be left. Nine Dao said in a low voice, I don't agree with this ending. You guys are too pessimistic. I think there's finally a glimmer of hope that we can turn things around. Maybe in this era, we can wipe out the ultimate threat of the source of the vile earth. Gu Qing immediately nodded and said, There's definitely hope. Even if the strongest creatures in the depths of the vile earth awaken in this era, they can still be killed. We can wipe out everything in one battle. He didn't want to be the last emperor of this era. He wanted to live for another era. If the history books in the future recorded him as Emperor Collapse, it wouldn't just be embarrassing, but it would also represent the most miserable ending of his old age. He didn't want it to end like this. The Dog Emperor said, Let's go. Let's take a look along the way. If there's a suitable opportunity, kill one or two seed-level creatures. Then, they embarked on their return journey. Chu Feng walked on the ground alone, while the others acted as invisible people. There was indeed an obvious effect. Chu Feng was like a fiercely burning flame in the darkness. His aura and energy were incompatible with the strange creatures, and he immediately attracted many gazes. However, this was more like fishing for a big fish, attracting people to come to him. At first, it was just some quasi-green level creatures attacking, and Chu Feng didn't want to bother with them. In the end, he only injured them and chased them away. However, this still caused a huge commotion. A madman from the heavens killed Meng Lan, the descendant of the Tao ancestor, and killed Qi Yuan, one of the strongest seeds. He even dared to be so high-profile and run amok in the Darkness continent. What made the strange races feel embarrassed was that this madman hadn't been defeated yet. He had been domineering all the way, sweeping away all the challengers. After many years of being domineering and invincible in one great era after another, the strange races had long been arrogant and couldn't accept defeat. Hence, this time, many people were alarmed. Not only the geniuses from the Darkness continent, but also the monsters from the other dark universes and the source of the strangeness came out one by one. There was something that surprised the dark creatures. This madman actually didn't massacre the challengers. He actually spared their lives. Remember, you owe me a life. If we meet on the battlefield in the future, you have to save 100 evolvers from the heavens. Swear a great oath. Along the way, Chu Feng swept away all the enemies and forced them to swear the greatest oath. It wasn't that he was soft-hearted. The main thing was that he was now a quasi-green level life form, and it wasn't fair for him to win. He really didn't want to be entangled with these people. Finally, something happened that triggered his boundless killing intent. Regardless of whether it was the dark creatures or the primitive strange races, there were people who valued martial arts. For example, the group he spared did want to have a fair battle with him. However, there were also some life forms with fickle thoughts and were relatively vicious. They were clearly quasi-green level life forms, but they claimed to be quasi-green level life forms and blocked Chu Feng's path. Moreover, there were quite a lot of them. There were more than 10 of them, and it was clear that they had come to hunt Chu Feng. They were determined to make him stay. This group of relatively young, rotting, youthful monsters had appeared at the same time. This definitely wasn't a simple matter. These people were all heaven-gifted life forms from different regions. They were all arrogant and untamed. They were all core characters in their respective races and orthodoxies. Being able to gather them together was definitely not something an ordinary person could do. Chu Feng realized that a big fish might have come. As expected, he sensed something. There was a pale-faced youth behind the crowd, watching everything silently with a gloomy expression. This person could be considered a quasi-green level life form and was very powerful. Chu Feng felt that he wouldn't be weaker than Qi Yuan, but his style of doing things was completely different. It was very likely that another seed-level life form had been attracted. However, this person was more sinister and didn't intend to make a move himself. Instead, he wanted people to surround and hunt Chu Feng. Moreover, he only took a glance and silently retreated. He didn't want to participate too much and wanted to stay out of the situation. Chu Feng had already remembered him. Even if he didn't kill anyone else, he would kill him. Madman, come. I'll fight you. I'm a quasi-green level evolver from the Darkness Continent, Yu Lung. Someone laughed loudly and closed in on Chu Feng. Me too. Using the Yang Realm's method of dividing realms, I'm a quasi-green level evolver, Montu. Another person had a smile on his face. No matter how one looked at it, it was cold, cruel, and cruel. This was because only they themselves knew that they were true great universe life forms. They wanted to torture this opponent to death. The others in the surroundings didn't speak, but they also moved, blocking all directions and not giving Chu Feng a chance to escape. Since all of you want to make a move, then I'll send all of you on your way. Chu Feng shouted. In an instant, he moved as fast as lightning. He was like a moving bolt of primal chaos lightning, exploding the void and attacking in all directions with all his might. Bang! Yulung exploded. Even in death, he couldn't believe that a quasi-green level evolver had blown him up with a single punch. PFFF. Montua disintegrated and turned into a bloody mist. Rumble! A human-shaped bolt of lightning appeared in this area and swept through all the enemies in all directions. Amidst the terrifying runes and the glaring fist light, more than 10 great universe life forms that wanted to surround and hunt Chu Feng all died tragically. They were all blown up by him. These heaven-bestowed life forms didn't come from the same place. They came from many dark universes and were all outstanding talents since ancient times. Yet, they were all killed in an instant. They could only blame their viciousness for wanting to use their higher realms to suppress and kill the young experts from the Yang realm. In the end, they were killed instead. Chu Feng's body was clear and flawless. He was a great universe life form that wouldn't rot. How special was this? His strength could be said to have reached the peak of humanity and stood at the top of the pyramid. He had surpassed the other great universe life forms, and if he were to evolve one step further, he would be an immortal. Therefore, the fate of these people had long been decided. Boom! Chu Feng's body glowed as he chased in a certain direction. He wanted to get rid of that cold-eyed seed-level expert who liked to hide in the back. As expected, That pale-faced youth hadn't gone far and hadn't disappeared into the horizon. The main thing was that Chu Feng's movements were too fast. He didn't hesitate at all and killed the group of hunters with thunderous methods. Now, he had caught up to the main character. There was nothing to say. He didn't even ask about this person's identity and directly attacked. This person was very strong and was definitely a seed-level entity. However, his realm wasn't high and was still a step away from entering the true Great Universe domain. How could he have a good time after being caught by Chu Feng? He was blasted apart alive by Chu Feng. His body and soul light were torn into pieces and disintegrated in the void. He simply didn't dare to believe that he would be so miserable. He was killed by someone without rhyme or reason like this. He was too sullen and he was too unwilling to resign himself to this. However, he could only be angry up to this point. His whole body exploded and turned into ashes in the great Tao patterns. His form and soul were completely obliterated. Let's go. Chu Feng was the first to run. He really couldn't stay here any longer. It had only been a few days, but he had killed a Tao ancestor's descendant and even eliminated 2 seed-level experts at the source of the wretched earth. This definitely wasn't a small matter. He didn't want to be like a bright lamp in the darkness that attracted great enemies from all walks of life. This time, Jiu Daoi personally brought Chu Feng, the Dog Emperor, and the others back to the heavens. However, on the way back, they encountered an obstruction. A Tao ancestor-level entity finally appeared and didn't want to let them leave. Huh? Someone familiar? Jiu Daoi stopped in his tracks and revealed a strange expression. Chu Feng also opened his fiery eyes and saw a tall figure in the churning black mist opposite him. He stood tall in the sky like an iron tower and swept his gaze over them coldly. Hei Hong! He recognized him at a glance. Wasn't this the black-robed Tao ancestor who he had smashed and lost half of his body last time? It's really a small world. Fellow Taoist Hei Hong, how have you been? I've missed you very much. Chu Feng greeted him warmly. However, when Tao ancestor Hei Hong saw them and realized who he was intercepting, he didn't say anything else. With a whoosh, he turned around and disappeared. He didn't even wait for Chu Feng to finish speaking. He turned around and ran. At this moment, his speed of escape broke through the limit that he had ever reached. He could be said to be the fastest in the realm of Tao ancestors. Why are you leaving? Isn't it a joy to meet old friends? You're too impolite. Chu Feng shouted from behind. In the end, he roared, Hei Hong, where are you going? All the evolvers on the Dark Continent were dumbfounded. They couldn't believe their eyes. That madman's roar scared Tao ancestor Hei Hong away? At this moment, Hei Hong was cursing in his heart. He even wanted to curse out loud. Who was it that disturbed him out of seclusion and forced him to uphold justice? This was crazy. Deceiving his master and destroying his ancestors. How dare they send him to deal with that monster? Did they want him to die? When he received the report, he hurried out of seclusion and didn't understand the situation before rushing here. In the end, he met his nemesis. There were changes in the wretched earth, and he couldn't spare any manpower. He could only run. I remember now. The person who came to kowtow and report is called Song Qing? I'll remember you. Hei Hong was furious. Then, he ran all the way and completely disappeared from the Dark Continent. Chapter 1642. The Darkness Continent was shaken. Who was that lunatic? To think that he could make the Tao ancestor turn around without saying a single word, and fly away, never looking back. At this moment, Song Qing's heart was beating like a drum. He didn't know why, but he kept feeling terrified and uneasy. What was going on? He hesitated, wondering if he should run away as well. When they passed by the gigantic black city, Judeoyi glanced at the blood sun in the sky and then glanced at a terrifying plant at the end of the land. It should have matured. In any case, we've already offended the Darkness Continent. Let's go and pluck some more fruit. There's no need to worry about too many debts, and there's no harm in adding some new ones. With a swoosh, how terrifying was a Tao ancestor? He instantly teleported and arrived at a dark place in the darkness continent. There was a towering ancient tree here that was crimson and crystalline. Regardless of whether it was its leaves, trunk, or roots, they all seemed to be carved from blood jade. What kind of fruit is this? Can it be eaten when it grows in the land of darkness? Chu Feng asked. The great nirvana fruit is watered with the true blood of an ancient phoenix and nurtured for countless years. Only then can it produce several dozen fruit. That ancient phoenix is pure-blooded, and even though this fruit has taken root here, the contamination isn't too serious. It can refine those strands of strange substance. However, it won't be of much use to you. Each time your body evolves, it's actually comparable to a grand nirvana. It's very pure, and your corporeal body and soul light are flawless. Even the great universe realm that should be decaying originally isn't able to stump you. Therefore, you just have to watch. There's no need to consume it. Chu Feng opened his mouth. If he had known this would happen, he wouldn't have asked. He would have just gone up and plucked it and eaten it. This time, they didn't complicate matters. They picked all the fruits that were about to ripen and disappeared in an instant. Boom! Before he left, Jiudao reached out and grabbed at the Black City, pulling King Huai out from within. Then, he crushed him, killing him for good. The blood of immortal kings splattered everywhere, the scene incomparably terrifying. Heavens! Many people cried out in alarm, feeling indescribably shaken and horrified. An immortal king died just like that? It was crushed alive in the palm of someone's hand. Far, far away, in the depths of the dark continent, the tyrant blood-cleansed Song Qing's face was deathly pale. He was so scared that his entire body was drenched in cold sweat. If not for the fact that he was afraid of being reprimanded by the black-robed Taofather, he wouldn't have dared to return to his own city. In reality, the one who was most resentful was still the Huai King. Even before his death, he was incomparably resentful, extremely unwilling, and felt that he had been wronged. Apart from him, the black armored army in the city also flew into the sky and exploded into pieces. Not a single one of them was left. Then, the hand slowly retreated, leaving only a voice echoing, "Since you've entered the all heavens, we'll return the favor." Soon, they returned to the world of the living and entered the central heavenly palace of the summer state. Zhou Shi immediately rushed over. Seeing that Chu Feng was safe and sound, she heaved a sigh of relief. Chu Feng comforted her, telling her that everything went smoothly and there was nothing to worry about. For several days, Chu Feng, Jiudao, Gu Qing, and the others waited. They wanted to see if there would be any reactions from the Darkness Continent and the Bizarre Land, and if there would be any attacks. However, many days passed. Everything was calm, and everything was the same as before. Moreover, they received feedback that many powerful creatures in the Dark Universe were acting strangely. They seemed to be migrating, and then they actually began to go into hibernation. Clearly, something that the All Heavens didn't understand was happening. There's an unforeseen event. Maybe the source of the vile soil has been broken by someone, and someone has killed their way in? So, the great ceremony hasn't started, and the end-of-the-road creatures have never appeared? This was Jiudao's judgment. He felt that the truth wasn't far away. After Chu Feng returned, he guarded for more than half a month. After all, in a sense, he could be considered a high-end combat force on their side. Everything was very calm in the All Heavens, and nothing abnormal happened. On the contrary, some chaos began to appear in the Darkness Continent and some bizarre universes, but they didn't expand outward, and there were no signs of war. That's good too. I'll go back to the foreign realm and consolidate my cultivation. Chu Feng left. He needed time too much. In the foreign realm, he had plenty of time to think about his own methods and study his future path. This world was the best place for him to cultivate in seclusion. Chu Feng sat quietly under the ancient tree, breathing in and out and consolidating his Tao fruit. At the same time, he was also flipping through various scriptures and thinking about all the ideas related to evolution. In this world, another 1,000 years had passed in a hurry. Chu Feng's cultivation had improved a bit, but it seemed extremely difficult to break through that layer of window paper. The Dog Emperor had once told him that a true mortal immortal needed to endure for tens of thousands of years. Even if one took a shortcut to become an immortal in a short period of time, they would most likely become a water immortal. I'll push the great universe and the ultimate to the extreme at the same time. In the end, I'll become a mortal immortal. Chu Feng got up. He knew that Yao Yao was definitely treading on this path, but she had already deviated from the pollen evolution path and was taking advantage of the advantages of several families. On this day, someone broke into the foreign realm. It was actually a rotten great universe creature who rushed over to deliver a letter. Moreover, he was very alarmed as he told Chu Feng that something big had happened. On the dark land, an astonishing bloody light shot into the heavens and tore apart many great universes. Shocking the world wasn't enough to describe it, because many ancient evolvers had never seen such a scene. Had there been an unforeseen event in the strange land? Chu Feng came out of seclusion. As a high-end combat power, and someone who had once cremated a Tao ancestor, he had the qualifications to be notified and go to defend. The Yang realm, the Summer province, and the central heavenly palace had vaguely become the center of the heavens. Various immortal kings, clan masters, and supreme sect masters of various orthodoxies had all arrived. They paid close attention to the outside world and used treasured mirrors to monitor the abnormal phenomena in the dark land. It was too shocking. There was a bloody light that shot into the heavens and tore apart the space outside the world. It caused parts of the dark universe to crack and collapse. It was cut apart by that bloody light. However, that bloody light definitely didn't erupt in those dark continents. It had another source, and it was suspected to be blossoming in the depths of the vile earth. The so-called vile earth was the base camp of the strange races, but no one had been able to find the true source for countless eras. The depths of the vile earth that they were talking about now were only confirmed to be of secondary importance. It shouldn't be the supreme ancestral land. However, this was enough to show how terrifying the depths of the vile earth were. It was very difficult for outsiders to find that place, and there would definitely be creatures at the end of the road overseeing it. Now, through the bloody light, through the boundless scarlet clouds that resembled the rebirth of a blood phoenix, and through the red light that drowned many universes, people realized how vast the depths of the vile earth were. They also roughly determined its location. It was too far away. It was actually separated by a great 1,000 worlds and many universes. Even immortal kings couldn't go there, and even Tao ancestors would be afraid. Even though it still wasn't the ominous supreme ancestral land, someone seemed to be causing trouble there today. This was enough to shock the heavens and the earth. The Dog Emperor's expression was grave. He had been staring at it all this time, as if he had been petrified. He didn't move at all. Suddenly, his body trembled, and his voice was very unnatural. It was unknown whether it was from fear or excitement. With a trembling voice, he said, "That might be the blood energy naturally emitted by a person." What? People simply couldn't believe it. Even though they were separated by a great 1,000 worlds, they could still vaguely see some of the terrifying scenes. That was actually all caused by a person's blood energy? It really was unimaginable, leaving all of the immortal kings indescribably shaken. They couldn't help but want to tremble. Just how powerful was a person's blood energy to be able to create this type of scene? The wisps of blood-colored mist that seeped out cut apart some of the dark cosmos. Moreover, one had to understand that this definitely wasn't the central maelstrom battlefield. Even though there were countless great cosmos separating them, the scarlet multicolored blood energy could still sweep over, affecting the great 1,000 worlds, making heaven and earth tremble. Scarlet light could be seen rushing into the heavens. Correct, that is a person's blood energy naturally spilling out. The rotten corpse also trembled, excited to the point where he couldn't control himself. It was as if he was a bit drunk, his body swaying. Too shocking. It is actually powerful to this degree. Nine Daoi also spoke up. Even as a Dao ancestor, right now, he felt like he was too insignificant, unable to compare at all. There was someone stirring up heaven, overflowing winds and waves in the depths of the vile earth, truly shaking past, present, and future. This was definitely a super great event that was going to be recorded in the annals of history. Hong. In the surroundings of the vile earth, there were dark cosmos that split apart, directly breaking apart. Kacha. Blood energy overflowed, exceeding stellar rivers, shaking up the ominous world. Even though that place was vast and boundless, far exceeding the heavens, there was still scarlet multicolored light surging, shaking up the outer dark cosmos. Rumble. There was even a dark world that directly exploded, collapsing in an instant. Even Gu Qing opened his mouth, unable to say anything. His entire body was like a clay sculpture, frozen on the spot. What kind of power was that? Compared to it, he was truly insignificant to the point where he couldn't even be compared. They weren't even on the same order of magnitude, the difference was too great. Fist light, I saw a matchless and unrivaled fist light. The Dog Emperor was so excited that he shouted loudly, causing the various celestial kings present to be astonished and shocked. One could vaguely see that in the most terrifying vile earth, apart from the blood energy that was naturally released affecting the surrounding dark cosmos, there were even more resplendent and shocking beams of light that rushed up from time to time, vast and mighty, sweeping away the thick turbid energy that had existed for millions and millions of years. Hong. Finally, the various celestial kings, as well as the old patriarchs of various clans, also saw that there was indeed an even more dazzling light that tore apart the darkness, even directly blasting apart some of the dark cosmos. It can be like this even outside the battlefield? The fist light carried an immeasurable amount of mighty power, and even the surging remnant power could be like this. It was simply impossible to imagine how terrifying and astonishing the fist light at the center was, and it was truly inconceivable. At this moment, the people drew a blurry outline in their hearts. There was a man with unrivaled mighty power, his blood energy surging, drowning out the surrounding cosmos. His black hair was loose, his eyes were like cold lightning, and he stood tall and upright, waving an invincible fist seal to suppress the strange vile earth. His fist light was immeasurable, matchless, and unrivaled, sweeping up the river of time, suppressing the past, present, and future. In fact, the next moment, the people really saw such a blurry figure, resonating with the world, standing tall in the long river of time, suppressing the strange vile earth. Is that him? The Dog Emperor was so excited that his voice was hoarse, and all the hair on his body stood on end. His entire body was trembling, and his emotions were fluctuating violently. The rotten corpse was the same. He was trembling, and he couldn't help but want to roar out loud. Jiu Daoi also had a strange expression, because he, too, had guessed who that was. Uncle Masters, is that my master? At this time, a bald man who hadn't shown himself for a long time ran over. He had appeared together with the rotten corpse and the Dog Emperor during the great battle of the Soul River. Now, his lips were trembling, and his emotions were overflowing. At this moment, everyone was shocked. It was because many immortal kings had guessed the identity of the man waving the fist imprint in the vile earth. Kill! It was to the extent where at this moment, everyone heard this shout in their hearts, shaking the heavens and causing a large area of the land of darkness to explode. A single person stood in the vile earth, and his fist imprints were unrivaled. He broke through the blockade of the endless creatures, and he slaughtered his way forward alone. Yi Tiendi! Some people couldn't help but cry out. Even though many years had passed, and ordinary people had long forgotten about those dazzling figures in the long river of history. However, there were many immortal kings here, and there were even old monsters who had survived from that era. At this moment, some people couldn't help but tear up. There were old immortal kings who cried. Even though they didn't have any interactions with Yi Tiandi in that era, and they didn't even recognize the Dog Emperor, just a youth in a remote cosmos in that era, there wasn't anyone who didn't know the name of the Heavenly Emperor. That era was far away, and almost everyone from that era was buried in history. Only a few people remained, becoming the symbols of that era. Today, when they saw that unrivaled fist light again, that unrivaled man who was still as heroic as before, the youth of the past, today's old immortal king couldn't help but shed tears like rain. There were a few other similar people, all of them extremely ancient creatures. "Master, that really is my master!" The bald man also released a long howl, his face long covered in tears. He once again saw that familiar and unrivaled figure. Yi Tiandi, an unrivaled expert who rose up in the cultivationless age during the change of the Great Era. He left behind too many legends, and there was even more endless brilliance, illuminating the entire ancient history. He was a figure who could shine together with that person, a truly unrivaled heavenly emperor. In countless eras, he was always the highest goal of those who advanced after him, a majestic peak on the path of evolution, an unsurpassable peak. "Old Yi, it really is you. You returned. Why didn't you come to see me? If you didn't appear, I would have died of old age from serious injuries." The Dog Emperor cried. The rotten corpse also roared out, "Yi Black, what's wrong with you? Why didn't you return all this time?" Regardless of whether it was him or the Dog Emperor, last time, they both indirectly came into contact with Yi Tiandi, obtaining the Bronze Emperor coffin he sent back, also seeing his figure. However, afterwards, they all realized that Yi Tiandi's true body was most likely in danger. They didn't know where he was, unable to confirm if he could reappear again. Today, they finally released a breath of relief. That figure whose blood energy overflowed into the heavens was still the same as before, unrivaled in the heavens above and earth below, slaughtering his way into the vile earth. Was he going to wipe out the inauspicious ancestral land alone? It was clear that that figure wasn't distracted. He was incomparably powerful, sweeping through everything in his path, striking into the depths of the vile earth. There were Lu Jin-level blood surging in front of him, and there were opponents who were sent flying. An incomparable great battle, a peerless struggle for supremacy. Between the heavens, everyone was shaken. They couldn't see the true great confrontation, but Zhou Daoi could deduce a few blurry scenes through the boundless fist radiance and energy fluctuations. He simulated and displayed a few scenes, immediately leaving everyone stupefied. In this life, they were fortunate enough to vaguely see a great confrontation between Lu Jin-level existences. Yi He beat him to death. Kill this strange, immortal emperor. The rotten corpse roared. "Master, you will forever be unrivaled." The bald male laughed while shedding tears. The Dog Emperor clenched its large claws. It was muttering softly, saying, "I just knew that you were unrivaled a long time ago. Many eras ago, I unknowingly obtained the gift you gave me from the river of time. I then understood that you already had the power to suppress and kill all enemies." It had previously promised Chu Feng that it could protect his relatives, because it had the methods of a celestial emperor. Even though it was an exaggeration, it wasn't all lies. Many eras ago, it had come into contact with Celestial Emperor Ye's gift. The rotten corpse also said softly, "The main sacrifice had previously said that you wouldn't be able to return, that you would die in the distance. There was a Lu Jin-level immortal emperor obstructing your Tao, not allowing you to advance even an inch. Now, it seems like you are still the same as before, your nature not changing at all. I suspect that at that time, you had already achieved the Tao, dragging that Lu Jin-level immortal emperor along to sharpen yourself, understanding the nature of these strange creatures. I believe that this is the truth. Even if I guessed wrong, it isn't much. However, one thing is certain, and that is that the immortal emperor obstructing your Tao was definitely killed by you. Only then would you return. At the end of its words, the rotten corpse roared excitedly. Killing an immortal emperor, how shocking of a battle achievement was this! He was still the same person from back then. His temperament was still slightly dark when facing the enemy, and his battle prowess was still invincible. The dog emperor couldn't help but howl. The immortal kings present also roared excitedly. Everything is futile, the final outcome has long been decided. A calm voice came from the depths of the wretched earth. Someone blocked Celestial Emperor Yi, fighting fiercely with him, but in the end, that enemy was covered in strange blood, half of his body was beaten to pieces, and he was sent flying. He couldn't stop Celestial Emperor's footstep. However, that terrifying Lu Jin-level creature quickly attacked again, saying, "In this pure land we are indestructible, no one can match us." An unfathomable battle erupted again. Someone blocked Celestial Emperor Ye's path, fighting him to the death. The creatures in the heavens couldn't watch a battle of that level, they couldn't bear it at all. 9 Dowie deduced according to the residual energy fluctuations, allowing people to roughly understand what had happened, as if they saw two great experts in a bloody battle. Boom! In the end, the great 1,000 worlds trembled, a part of the dark universe directly disintegrated, and the depths of the vile earth also cracked, a terrifying great destruction happening. Pooh! The blood of the Lu Jin-level creature splashed in all directions, Celestial Emperor Yi smashing a strange immortal emperor with his fist, blasting him to pieces. "I am the Celestial Emperor, I should suppress all enemies in the world." This voice shook many dark universes in the vile earth, also spreading to the heavens. At this moment, regardless of whether it was the Dog Emperor, the rotten corpse, or the immortal kings who understood Celestial Emperor's past, they were all moved to the point of trembling, tears brimming in their eyes. In a daze, they seemed to have returned to that resplendent great era of the past. Back then, Celestial Emperor Yi had also said these words, calming the blood and chaos, eliminating all great enemies. It was like a dream. After countless eras, people heard these words again, as if they had returned to that era. He was still the same as before. "I already said that in this pure land, my race is indestructible, evergreen. This is the foundation for us to sweep through the world, annihilate all enemy races, no one can leave alive." A terrifying voice rang out, the enemy of the Lu Jin level appeared again. Not only that, but there was also another creature that walked out from the depths of the vile earth, blocking Celestial Emperor Yi together. When they vaguely sensed all of this, the hearts of everyone in the heavens sank. Then, another person walked out from the depths of the vile earth, a total of 3 supreme creatures blocking in front of them, wanting to kill Celestial Emperor Yi together. At this level, how could there be anything like crossing levels to kill an enemy? It was very difficult to fight one against many. The creatures that reached this realm were all world-shaking powerhouses, all the protagonists of a certain era. How much weaker would they be? In this realm, even the invincible Celestial Emperor Yi could kill one. It might be possible to fight one against 2, but if he wanted to kill 3 great immortal emperors alone, it was really too difficult. At this time, the hearts of the evolvers in the heavens were in their throats, their hearts filled with fear. In this era, there was actually no one who could fight side by side with Celestial Emperor Yi, who could help him share the pressure. "You are very strong, but is there any meaning? You found this place. In the end, it is difficult to escape disaster. Everything has long been decided." The ultimate creature spoke, his voice incomparably cold, without the slightest emotional fluctuation. Another strange immortal emperor also spoke. "Perhaps you will display the most powerful power in this battle, like a star burning the universe, illuminating the darkness, but in the end death is inevitable. In that extreme brilliance of sublimation, you will return to eternal silence, like fireworks in the night for a moment. How many great heroes, even though they left behind indelible footprints in the vast sky of history, were once endlessly brilliant, but in the end, they were nothing more than a flash in the pan. It was very short, and they withered and fell at the peak of their brilliance. The rise and fall of all living things, evergreen with me, all of you will eventually come to an end. This is your final destination. When the strange immortal emperor said these words, Celestial Emperor Yi was silent, only taking a step forward, killing his way forward alone. Suddenly, in the sky above the strange vile earth, the vault of heaven collapsed. A woman in white came treading the sky, truly peerless in style. She descended, otherworldly and powerful. In her hand there was actually a head. This formed an extremely strong contrast with her spotless white, untainted temperament. The main sacrifice has died? In the vile earth, the expression of the strange, immortal emperor changed, his emotions fluctuating. Pung! The empress threw the head in her hand over, turning it into a rain of light, evaporating into the purest ultimate level multicolored light, making the vile earth rumble, greatly rupturing, and then the head completely dissipated. Empress? In the world of the living, the dog emperor's eyes widened. Even though he couldn't see, only able to vaguely understand the situation through the hazy reaction of the 9 Daos, it still left him shocked, and then he grinned, wanting to laugh loudly. Who said there was no help? Who said there was no one in this world who could fight shoulder to shoulder with Celestial Emperor Yi? Even though the Empress stepped onto that dead end, known as the Bridge of Death where one couldn't retreat, couldn't turn back, she actually reversed and returned. That place couldn't stop her, couldn't make her stay, killed the main sacrifice who tangled with her last time, and directly returned. The main sacrifice of this great era was killed. Even the creatures in the vile earth were moved. At the same time, there were strange creatures who were puzzled. Where did that bridge of death lead to? No one understood better than them that it was a place of certain death. Apart from the strange race's own camp, once outsiders set foot on it, it would be difficult for them to return. Outside the heavens, there was the sacrificial sea, the place where immortal emperors were sacrificed. The bridge of death the Empress stepped on led to the only grand altar in the depths of the sacrificial sea. As long as one stepped onto that ancient blood-colored altar, it was the same as becoming a sacrifice, unable to return alive. However, today, she returned powerfully, even carrying the head of the main sacrifice. Was she sacrificing him instead? Immortal emperors didn't die, the end of the path wouldn't be destroyed, but that still depended on the situation. There were some places where this level of existence could fall. My race offers sacrifices to time, the source of all things, the beginning of all things, dispatching him to become the main sacrifice of this great era. He shouldn't have died. Why is it like this? The strange, immortal emperor frowned. With a hong sound, what responded to him was the white-clothed empress' snow-white palm, shattering heaven and earth, splitting apart the vile earth, piercing through eternity, unmatched in the world, suppressing towards him. At the same time, there was also Celestial Emperor Ye's fist imprint, resplendent and illuminating the ages, blasting forward. The two emperors moved side by side, slaughtering their way into the depths of the vile earth. Chapter 1643. Jiudao coughed up a large mouthful of blood. He couldn't hold on any longer. Even though he was a peerless Dao ancestor, he couldn't bear watching a battle between beings at the Dao realm. If he kept watching, his own Dao would collapse. In reality, he hadn't truly witnessed it with his own eyes, nor had he come into contact with that kind of supreme power. He had merely deduced it through the remnant fluctuations, yet it was already like this. What happened? How is it? The dog emperor was anxious and impatient. At such a critical moment, he couldn't understand the situation in the vile earth, which made him anxious and fearful. He was afraid that something bad had happened to the two sky emperors. At the end of the heavens, in the dark universe, the scarlet clouds gradually faded into the distance. The two celestial emperors stepped on the vile earth together and were gradually drowned by the darkness. No one in the outside world could sense what was happening there. Gu Qing couldn't. Although he was a Taofather, his Tao was still shallow. Jiu Daoyi was truly exhausted. He could no longer continue watching and deducing. The Dog Emperor was anxious and worried. He was afraid that the two of them would perish in the depths of the vile earth, and he would never see them again. After all, that was the place with the densest ominous energy. It was the base camp of the bizarre species. Since ancient times, no one knew how many low-end-level creatures lived there. The decayed corpse and bald male also walked back and forth. They were also extremely anxious, wishing they could slaughter their way into that battlefield. No matter how strong the two emperors were, how could they resist the joint attack of beings of that level? 1 day, 2 days, dozens of days had passed, but there was no news from the land of darkness. This made people feel even more uneasy. Jiu Daoyi still couldn't use the Tao ancestor's origin. His face was pale, and many people couldn't help but shiver in fear. This was the first time they had a clear understanding of a Tao ancestor-level creature. It wasn't that it was impossible to watch the battles between the peak-level creatures, but one couldn't come into contact with the great power they released, not even the aftershocks. However, the vile earth was too far away, separated by the endless cosmos. If they didn't capture those streams of light, there was no way they could see the truth. No matter what, even the Tao ancestor had suffered such injuries in the battle. It was truly shocking. The kings felt powerless. If the great sacrifice arrived, no one at the end of the path could stop it. The heavens would collapse in an instant, nothing unexpected happening. This left everyone in despair. If they lost the two emperors, what would the future be like? Perhaps no one would be able to hold back the footsteps of the strange race. No one would be able to stop them. Darkness would cover their homeland, and the mountains and rivers would be covered in ink. Several months passed, but there was still no news. The dark land was deathly stifling, even the creatures there doing their best to hide themselves. They didn't know how the vile earth was doing either. Chu Feng's heart was heavy. He now truly understood how terrifying these end-of-the-road creatures were. Without reaching that realm, no matter how talented one was, they were still ants. Even Tao ancestors were weak in the eyes of living beings at that level. They were powerless to turn the tide of any battle. Chu Feng comforted the Dog Emperor. Those two should be fine. It was just that when he said these words, even he himself felt uncertain, and his heart palpitated. They were the ones who delayed the arrival of the vile earth. They were the ones who delayed the arrival of the great ceremony. But now they won't be able to return. Gu Qing's voice was low. His emotions were incomparably complicated. In his opinion, those two were the true celestial emperors, and he was never one. He was only chasing after the legends of his predecessors. Half a year passed. The hearts of the people of the heavens grew heavier and heavier. In particular, the Dog Emperor, the rotten corpse, and the others were restless. Their hearts were filled with the chill of autumn. Suddenly, one day, someone in the heavens roared, "Dragon, tiger, cat, rat, and wolf brats of the vile earth, do you want to eat people? Your grandfather has also come to take revenge." With a boom, someone borrowed the path to the heavens and returned from the sacrificial sea. Then, he directly attacked the land of darkness. He killed his way in according to the coordinates illuminated by Celestial Emperor Ye's blood energy not long ago. It's him? The people of the heavens were shocked. Then, they were incomparably excited and delighted. It was the person who had returned on the Emperor's bone. He was also the true body of the mastermind behind the scenes. He had taken away the will of darkness on earth, and was now even more powerful. However, there was always a fierce tiger attacking him from behind. Now, he had actually come back to kill. They had originally thought that it would take a long time for him to return. Obviously, He must have paid a great price. In reality, not long after, people heard his angry roar again. "Damn tiger, you chased me and bit me. You won't let me go? Sooner or later, I'll peel off your tiger's skin and eat your tiger meat." At this level, an entity that could be called a fierce tiger by him was absolutely terrifying. In the end, he broke through the darkness and killed his way into the distance. It was obvious that he was straining. There was vile earth in front of him and a fierce tiger behind him. After that, everything became quiet again. There was no more sound. An ominous feeling arose in many people's hearts, but they were powerless to change it. They could only wait in silence. "I'm going to evolve." Chu Feng clenched his fist. There was no point in waiting any longer. He had to go cultivate. Even though he knew there wasn't enough time, he still wanted to work hard to improve himself. In the Yang realm, 1 year, 2 years. 10 years passed. The dog emperor seemed increasingly old, and the rotten corpse was also stooped. Every day, it talked to itself and waited anxiously. In the foreign realm, tens of thousands of years had passed. For the first time, Chu Feng felt that it was too difficult to become a mortal immortal. He couldn't break through that boundary and couldn't enter that domain. During this period, he also went to see Yao Yao. Even though her talent was unparalleled, Yao Yao was still trapped and hadn't reached that realm. The two discussed. Mortal immortals were mostly achieved in the vile end of days. In the foreign realm, where the great Tao was incomplete but there were shortcuts, it was most likely difficult to walk through. Even if they used time to endure, they might not necessarily succeed. In the end, Yao Yao and Chu Feng came out of their seclusion. For them, the foreign realm was temporarily useless. During these years, Old Gu, Yellow Cow, Li Jiuxiao, the Black Yak, Mi Tian, and Ji Kaixin were constantly advancing and steadily improving their strength. They had gone out many times to break through realms and then returned to seclusion. The outside world was still quiet. There weren't many changes. The two people were looking forward to never reappeared. Time passed quickly. Chu Feng walked all over the heavens, comprehending his own path and experiencing the various forms of the mortal world. He wanted to break through and break through. He thirsted for power. After the shocking change in the vile land, dozens of years had passed. The decayed corpse and the dog emperor became more and more haggard. Their originally withered bodies became more and more obvious. Jiu Daoi had already recovered, but he couldn't find anything when he searched again and seriously deduced. The strange vile land was a field of darkness. Up until more than 70 years had passed. The dark continent actually gradually became active. The races that had hibernated appeared again. Immediately, the heavens' atmosphere became extremely gloomy. That day, the dog emperor directly coughed up a mouthful of blood and staggered toward the place where he lived in seclusion. "The people I've been waiting for, will I ever see you again in this life?" The dog emperor whispered, incomparably lonely. The decayed corpse and the bald man were also incomparably disappointed. It was as if they had lost all their energy. They hated themselves for not being strong enough to kill their way into the vile land. All signs indicated that there were no more great waves in the vile land. However, this was extremely inauspicious news for the heavens. It made people feel intensely uneasy. So much so that some people were in despair. The two celestial emperors were deep in the vile land. Perhaps they had encountered a mishap. This type of feeling really wasn't good. In the recent decades, people's moods could be said to have experienced great ups and downs. Only then did hope appear, seeing the light of dawn. However, in the end, they were directly slammed into the abyss. In the past few decades, Gu Qing was frustrated and frustrated. He blamed himself, feeling that he was too useless. As the new celestial emperor, he didn't have any great achievement. The main reason was still because he was weak. Gu Qing felt disappointment and also worry. When he saw Yi Tiandi and the female emperor disappear and kill their way into the depths of the vile land, he was extremely excited and also shocked. but now they still hadn't returned even after so long. He sighed softly, feeling that he was a great failure. In the end, he shook his head forcefully, murmuring to himself in a low voice, "Uncle Yi, you are the true Celestial Emperor. I'm a fake Celestial Emperor. I've brought shame to this title. I've given it up. Since I can't protect this homeland, can't protect these great rivers and mountains, and even more so have no strength to fight in the ominous lands, what face do I have to sit in this position? I'll continue on my own, letting all glory and splendor return to its original state. I'm not the Celestial Emperor, I've never been one." This caused many people to be astonished. At this moment, Gu Qing actually seemed to be relieved. In the past, Gu Qing revered Yi Tiandi and the others, wholeheartedly wanting to reach this position, but today, he let go of everything. For a moment, his body cracked and his Dao body was actually going to collapse. Jiu Daoi immediately rushed over, berating, "Are you muddle-headed? Do you not want to live anymore? Your foundation is the Dao fruit built on the position of Celestial Emperor." "I'm not the Celestial Emperor." Gu Qing shook his head. He seemed to have been freed, actually smiling. Moreover, he didn't collapse. Between heaven and earth, all clans sensed it. The boundless sea of consciousness of all living beings experienced his mood and state of mind, unexpectedly not suffering a backlash. His great Dao fate didn't decrease, and his body actually began to heal, gradually returning to the body of a Dao ancestor. "This is..." Jiu Daoi was shocked. Gu Qing truly walked into the domain of a Dao ancestor and didn't collapse? Gu Qing was also puzzled. He only acted according to his heart, feeling that he really wasn't worthy of being the new Celestial Emperor, so he took the initiative to abdicate. In the end, he didn't suffer a disaster? On the contrary, he seemed to have broken some kind of shackles and severed some inherent obsessions. His Dao fruit was further consolidated. In the end, Jiu Daoi seemed to understand and said, "The Celestial Emperor isn't a title, nor is it bestowed by someone. It depends on your heart, whether it's for the public, whether it's willing to stand on the side of the will of the heavens. Now you have lost the position of Celestial Emperor, but this world has also prepared a path of retreat for you, believing that you can still be considered a protector." Time flew by, and in the blink of an eye, 100 years had passed. These years, Chu Feng had always been walking in various great worlds, tempering himself. When he returned, the first thing he heard was a piece of news related to him. A seed-level entity from the vile earth had come to the heavens. He was at the great cosmos level, and specifically wanted to challenge Chu Feng. He was extremely powerful and could kill immortals. Chu Feng wasn't there, so Yao Yao attacked and directly beheaded this person. Good kill, another seed-level entity is gone. These are all future Dao ancestors, terrifying disasters. Killing one is equivalent to saving a large number of future entities. Chu Feng returned and was very happy after hearing the news. It didn't matter if he killed or if Yao Yao killed. However, he soon frowned as he thought of a few things, and his heart immediately sank. That was because these strange entities had already dared to come to the heavens to train. Did this mean that they had completely quelled the upheaval in the vile earth? "The situation is terrible," Chu Feng whispered. In reality, everyone had a premonition that the situation was incomparably grim. The thing they were most worried about might have happened. As expected, when the Dog Emperor received the news, his reaction was the most intense. He continuously coughed up large mouthfuls of blood, and the fur on his body rapidly turned gray. His eyes were dim and without light. The old dog cried. He had an ominous premonition, and he didn't have much time left. He most likely wouldn't be able to see those two again in this lifetime. After this day, the Dog Emperor became depressed. He became more and more silent, and he seemed more and more old. He often became absent-minded and sluggish. In the end, he stopped breathing and no longer circulated his blood energy. He was incomparably dejected. I can't hold on any longer. The conviction I've held in my heart for so many years has collapsed. All of my perseverance and suffering have come to an end. I'm no longer going to fight against the heavens. It's better to let nature take its course and die." The dog emperor was exhausted. He chattered endlessly, saying that the old dog had returned to the mountains and was going to find a place to bury himself. After Chu Feng learned of the situation, he immediately rushed over and said loudly, "Pull yourself together! You said it yourself that you had to protect my loved ones and not let me sink into depravity. I had to stay far away from despair and always be full of fighting spirit. But what about you?" The dog emperor shook his head powerlessly. "I'm old. My source has been exhausted in the battle back then. I've been fighting against the heavens for so many years and have bitterly lived until now. I really can't go on any longer. There's no more hope. The people I care about are all dead." The dog emperor bent down and strenuously carried the emperor corpse and the broken bell on his back. In the end, he looked towards the depths of the vile earth and stared for a long time. His stooped body was incomparably bleak. He was weak and declining. He wept blood and said in a low voice, "Has the era of the 3 heavenly sovereigns completely ended? Did something happen to those 2 as well? They've fallen into a hopeless situation." He felt that there was no meaning in continuing to endure. The memories of his era were gradually becoming blurry. Even his final thoughts had dimmed. Even the most powerful person was about to die. That was the symbol and imprint of a great world. Now there was only him and the rotting corpse left. What meaning was there for 2 or 3 of them to continue living alone? "I haven't risen yet. Wait for me," Chu Feng shouted. "It's useless. You don't have time." The dog emperor glanced at him and hung his head again. He carried the emperor corpse on his back and staggered forward. In the end, he entered the mountains and chose a place with verdant hills and clear waters to sit down. He began to sit still and wait to die in meditation. He was going to bury himself. In his final moments, he seemed to have the last radiance of a setting sun. He longed for his homeland and looked at the world of mortals. His turbid and lifeless eyes gazed at the great rivers and mountains in the distance. Finally, he trembled and raised his head proudly. He had decided to leave. Roar. The roar of the dog emperor was filled with grief and indignation, as well as endless melancholy and regret. All of the unwillingness and resentment, as well as the final despair, were contained in this final roar that shook the mountains and rivers and resounded through the heavens. The old scenes of the past seemed to appear before his eyes. He saw the 3 sky emperors and their glorious era in the past. "I've returned. I've dreamed of the desolate antiquity to find you all." After saying these words, he breathed his last. His head hung down, and the withering soul light died out. "Dog!" The decayed corpse roared in anger. By the time he received the news, it was already too late. He rushed over like a madman and hugged the corpse. His rotting face flowed with bloody tears as he roared, "You coward, why did you run away? Are you willing to die just like this? Its body has withered. It can't hold on any longer." Jiudao sighed softly. The rotting corpse stood where he was. Bloody tears flowed continuously. He didn't move and didn't speak anymore. "Our era has ended." After a long time, the rotting corpse said these words. He hugged the dog emperor and staggered into the distance until he disappeared. Yellow leaves drifted down from the sky. Withered leaves covered the ground. This world was a bit cold. The autumn wind was bleak. Deep winter hadn't arrived yet, but it was already bone-chilling. Chapter 1644. The dog emperor died just like that. It was truly a bit miserable, and Chu Feng was silent for a long time. He found it hard to accept that the dog hadn't seen everything it had seen after suffering for so long. It was lonely, sorrowful, and despairing. Even though it was sentimentally attached, it had left. Only a few people knew about this because once it was made public, the effects would be too great. It could be considered a symbol of an era, leaving behind the brand of a certain great era. If its death was known to the whole world, it would cause unfathomable panic and chaos. Just think about it, even the creatures that had lived with the celestial emperor for many years had withered. What about the others? Did this era mean that it was destined to die out quickly, and that it would be considered the end of the world? Chu Feng left with a heavy heart. Although this dog had never been glorious, its straightforward personality, as well as its legendary past, had left an indelible impression on Chu Feng. The dog emperor's whispers and roars before its death had moved Chu Feng greatly. I hope your soul returns to the primordial era and find the people you want to see. Chu Feng sighed. He thought about the future. Would there come a day when the people around him would die one by one? Would the black yak, tiger Dong, and the others be like the dog emperor? One of them would remain in this world for a long time, living in solitude for a long time before finally passing away with boundless sorrow and disappointment? He didn't want to see such a scene. He didn't want to be separated by life and death. He wanted to protect everything. But all of this required power. He needed to become strong enough. In the following years, Chu Feng continued to walk the world and comprehend the path of the future. During this period, he met Yao Yao twice to discuss the path and techniques of the future. Were there stronger immortals above the mortal immortal realm and below the immortal king realm? Chu Feng and Yao Yao were determined to walk far enough on the path of evolution. They longed for the end of the road. Did they need to sublimate in every realm and break the ceiling again and again to reach the supreme realm? If they took a wrong step or made a mistake, it was very likely that they would miss the final opportunity to reach the end of the road. They were incomparably serious. For this reason, they flipped through ancient books and searched for legends. They even consulted the people of the Nine Tao. Afterward, the legends of the outstanding people of the past were presented to them. Among them, there were parts of that person's experiences and the paths of the three celestial emperors. This was simply too precious and priceless. Chu Feng and Yao Yao were moved. They studied and read it carefully. This wasn't a scripture or a secret technique, but it was very likely to be even more valuable. This was the result of having an immortal inheritance. Some problems and deductions had already been solved by the predecessors. Especially for an unorthodox person like Chu Feng, these words of experience were even more valuable. In the past few years, the Yang realm, Great Yin realm, and other places had discovered some good seedlings. They could be considered immortal seeds, and there were even some with special Tao bodies. From a few years old to a dozen years old, they are like a bunch of immortal seedlings waiting to grow. Some children not only have amazing physiques, but their comprehension is also amazing. It's hard to say how far they can go. If they are given time, I think they will usher in a brilliant era. Even Gu Qing was moved after he abdicated. He had more and more time to run to various places to preach. He was moved when he saw those youths. It was clear how astonishing these talented people were. Geniuses are bound to appear in troubled times. Heavenly creatures come forth in large numbers. Every time a golden age reappears, there will be all kinds of divine embryos and immortal seeds. The Nine Tao sighed. If there is enough time, these people will grow up. It will certainly be a brilliant golden age. Gu Qing said with incomparable certainty. In reality, their foresight was quite sharp. After another 10 years, a few geniuses rose up. That kind of radiance couldn't be hidden even if they wanted to. Nurture them well. Who knows, they might have to recuperate for many years after paying a great price during the last great chaos. This is our chance. Don't let down the two celestial emperors' efforts. This is the time they fought for us. It would be best if it could be peaceful for half an era. The two old men were hopeful, but they knew it wasn't realistic. The end of the world could come at any time, and the heavens might be overturned any day. The main thing was that the end of the road was too invincible. If there were no experts of the same level, there was no way to resist. Another few years passed, and the geniuses of the heavens grew extremely fast. Heavenly Divine King Li Qing fought against the 8-armed black spider King Chen Guang, who came to the world of the living to temper himself. He forcefully suppressed and killed the latter. This is Li Qing's 96th great victory after his rise. Especially recently, the strange races have penetrated deep into the heavens and often fought against us. Li Qing killed more than 20 of their geniuses in succession. His light truly illuminates the world. Later, the newly promoted celestial venerable Zhou Hong killed 6 geniuses of the strange creatures in succession, and his fame also rose. The most shocking thing was that there were rumors that Li Su had a chance of becoming an ancestor and was about to advance. He tied several complete chains of the great Tao of the evolutionary civilization to his stone coffin. He had endured from prehistoric times to this era, and he was truly about to start reaping astonishing results. Chu Feng went to understand the situation and confirmed that it wasn't a rumor. Even he was shocked. That was because, with Li Su's current age, if he succeeded, he could be considered a young Tao ancestor with astonishing potential. For a time, all over the heavens, 100 schools of thought contended, and extraordinary figures appeared one after another. It made people sigh. If it wasn't for the threat of the ominous power, a brilliant era would really have arrived. During this period, the terminal-level entity that had rushed back from the sacrificial sea and slaughtered its way into the vile land on the Emperor's bone had appeared once again and dealt a ruthless blow to the vile land. Then, it tore apart the heavens and roared, "The heavens are collapsing, and the heavens are all dead?" Chu Feng passed by the summer province in the world of the living and stopped. He once again went to see the rotten corpse and also to pay his respects to the dog emperor. He always felt that one more look was one less look. This great era might collapse at any time, and some people and graves would never be found again. Dog, open your eyes and take a look. In a trance, another great era has arrived. Geniuses are emerging in large numbers, and the proud sons of heaven from all walks of life are contending for hegemony. The new generation is rising, and everything is so beautiful. If you were still alive, would you want to nurture a few youths with special bloodlines? In the courtyard, the rotten corpse was currently drinking to drown his sorrows. He was full of emotions as he chattered on for the dog emperor to hear. Back then, the Li Su we tested, that black-hearted and black-handed brat who was extremely similar to you and me, is actually going to rise up as well, even about to aspire to become a Tao ancestor. With our current states, if we meet him again, I reckon that we won't be tormenting him, but rather being beaten up by him. Chu Feng came. When he heard these words, he also released a sigh. The relationship between the rotten corpse and the dog emperor was indeed quite deep. Even though the two of them had conned each other for many eras, only when they were separated by life and death would true feelings be revealed. It was as if he felt a bone-deep pain. Chu Feng discovered that the dog emperor's corpse had unknowingly, when been dug up from the mountain forest outside the courtyard, placed on a stone table in the courtyard. He didn't know what was going on, a bit stupefied. The rotten corpse's voice was gloomy and incomparably sad. Old friends have all left one after another. Even though the dog and I have conned each other along the way, now that it has left, my heart feels like it's being twisted by a knife. I can't bear to part with it. I think about our past every day, and I really can't bear it anymore. That's why I invited it out from the grave, having it accompany me. That way, even if the strange races attack one day and the heavens collapse and the earth cave in, the two of us old friends won't be separated, and we can rest together forever. Chu Feng was moved, truly moved. The relationship between these two was too deep, and just hearing it made one's nose sour. Looking down, he staggered to his feet, reeking of alcohol. Did he get drunk every day to relieve his worries? Chu Feng sighed again. What a pity. The experts of that era were all in their twilight years now, crippled in the great battle, and almost exhausted of their source. The rotten corpse got up, found a brilliant bottle, and said, "Dog, this is the wine personally brewed by the celestial emperor back then. He gathered the essence of the heavens and merged it with a rare heavenly seed. Back then, you and I both drank it. It truly is the brew of natural luck. Back then, I couldn't bear to drink it all, leaving behind a small half of the pot. Today, I'll offer it to you." However, he stopped himself again, saying, "But pouring it on the ground like this is a bit of a waste. There's only half a pot left in this world. Even though you loved this wine, you still died in the end. Since little friend Chu Feng came here to offer sacrifices to you, it means that he is someone who values friendship greatly. Let him drink it in your place. This way, he might even be able to make some breakthroughs. It's good for both of you, and at the same time, it can't be considered a waste." Right at this time, incomparably abrupt, that withered dog emperor actually sat up straight, as if he couldn't wait any longer. "How could I? I feel like I can still be saved. I'm not completely dead yet. I'll get the wine myself." Chu Feng was immediately shocked, simply not daring to believe his own eyes. He was directly stupefied. The decayed corpse's eyes were spitting fire as he glared at the dog emperor. There was no wine at all, the bottle was empty. Seeing this, the dog emperor's expression was wooden, and it lay down straight, saying, "So I'm already dead. This last strand of will should also dissipate. Dog, that's enough." The decayed corpse roared in anger, pounced over, and directly pulled the dog emperor up. In reality, there was someone who reacted even faster than he did. Jiu Daoyi had arrived at some point, and with a dark expression, he pulled the dog emperor over and said, "Son of a bitch, you've even deceived this old man." Without another word, he immediately gave the dog a beating. "Woof, woof, stop hitting me, stop. If you keep hitting me, I'm really going to die." The dog emperor howled. Not only did Jiu Daoyi attack, but at the same time, the decayed corpse was also not a benevolent creature, and kept fanning the flames from the side. Jiu Daoyi himself also personally took action, whipping the dog emperor. Chu Feng's mind was in a mess. This dog was actually not dead, and even now, he still found it hard to accept. Human nature, dog nature. Chu Feng really wanted to hit the dog. He had been sad for it for nothing, but in the end it was alive and kicking again. At this time, the veins on the decayed corpse's forehead were bulging. As he beat the dog emperor, he shouted, "Who asked you to trick me into crying? Damn it, how many years has it been? You've been tricking me all this time. Is this a rehearsal? Even if you die, you have to trick me this once." He was truly enraged, and Jiu Daoyi mainly felt that his old face had been shamed. He did not know what method this stupid dog had used to trick him, a Taoist ancestor. This was too shameful, too hateful. It was only when Gu Qing arrived that the dog emperor was saved, or else it would have been hung up by Jiu Daoyi and the decayed corpse and beaten for 3 days and 3 nights. After being released, the dog emperor howled in pain for a while. When it came to, it seemed to have come to a realization. Immediately, its dog face fell, and it looked at the decayed corpse with an unfriendly expression. "Stupid Taoist priest, did you see through it all along? That's why you dug me out from the grave and left me exposed to the sun every day, while you hid in the bamboo forest in the courtyard, drinking wine and having a good time." At the end, the dog emperor was practically grinding its teeth. When he heard this, Chu Feng was once again dumbfounded. These two were indeed not good people. It was still unclear who was the one who had screwed over who. Then, Jiu Daoyi did not care about anything else. He picked up the dog emperor and the decayed corpse and gave them a good beating. Only then did the old man feel refreshed, and he swaggered off. The decayed corpse's face was bruised and swollen, and he was a bit angry. Who could he find to reason with? He had actually been beaten up, dragged down by this stupid dog. "You dare say that you didn't trick me?" the dog emperor said angrily. It had always suspected that the decayed corpse was basking in the sun not because he missed it, but because he had seen some clues. The decayed corpse said, "Back then, I was indeed tricked by you, and I shed tears of innocence. But after that, I realized that you, a stupid dog, are the most greedy for life, and the most unwilling to die. How could you be willing to die like this? Especially now that the two emperors have appeared, and I don't know how they're doing. How could you be tired of the world? Even if you were shameless, you would still live to see the end." Then, the two of them began to fight. Chu Feng's face was full of black lines. These two were really bad people. The dog emperor turned to look at him, and said very seriously, "Actually, I did it for you. Did my death touch your heart? Did your incomparably strong desire to become stronger transform your state of mind? You truly experienced the cruelty of the great world, and the coldness of the mortal world. I am fulfilling your wish." Seeing the dog emperor's serious and righteous tone, Chu Feng was almost moved, but in the end, he still ignored it. What a scammer. Trying to fool people again? You don't understand me. I really do want to help you transform. Only then did the yard calm down. After a long time, the dog emperor sighed and said, "I really feel that living like this is too tiring, and I want to hide in a tomb to clear my mind. But you grave robber, you actually dug me out again. Actually, I just want to see if the celestial emperors will come to my dreams to save me, or see me off. I really want to contact them, to see through everything in the fog, because there are many things that I can't figure out." At this point, the dog emperor became serious and said, "Have you ever thought about why the celestial emperors won't see us? Is it because something is wrong with them, or is there something wrong with the world, or is there something wrong with us?" The decayed corpse's expression immediately became serious. He also realized some problems, and began to think very seriously. "These years I have been lying quietly in the tomb, emptying my mind and thinking about many problems," the dog emperor said in a low voice. The two monsters that had lived since ancient times looked at each other. From the depths of each other's eyes, they could see something, and both of them felt their scalps go numb. Seeing that they didn't say anything, Chu Feng didn't want to stay any longer. He bade farewell to Gu Qing beside him and walked out. F***ck, the sky is falling, and the celestial emperors are falling. If I believe in a dog, I will definitely be fooled. Chu Feng shook his head and disappeared into the forest. Gu Qing was speechless. He actually suffered the same fate. This was a very contradictory era. The world could be plunged into bloodshed and chaos at any time, and ominous energy could pour into the heavens at any time. However, under such a background, the worlds in the heavens had been flourishing in the past 2 decades. Dazzling stars were born one after another in the new generation. Many physiques, Dao bones, divine fetus, and sacred blood that were recorded in the history books appeared in some of the young people, and it really shocked many old monsters. One could imagine that after a few more years, this was destined to be a brilliant great era. Whenever the stars flickered, the world of evolution would definitely expand fiercely, and their overall strength would increase greatly. Even the entire evolutionary civilization would be greatly improved, erupting with even more resplendent radiance. Only, the older generation figures became more and more fretful and worried. A few immortal kings even felt a wave of bone-chilling coldness, a type of instinctive feeling that made them tremble. In a daze, it was as if they saw a pair of eyes slowly opening outside the world, about to observe the heavens. There is a creature at the end of the path that has awakened. Is he starting to pay attention to the world? Is he going to take action? Nine Dowie felt waves of cold aura, and his blood ran cold. The new generation was ignorant and unaware. They were full of hot blood and passion, exerting their lofty sentiments as they roamed about. Every day there would be new people rising up. Groups of stars flickered, shining brilliantly. Time flowed precisely in this great era of contradictions. The older generation felt a strong sense of uneasiness, feeling as if the world was going to collapse. The new generation was full of fighting spirit, longing for the future, wishing to defy the heavens and ascend. Another few decades passed. In the foreign realm, this was equivalent to tens of thousands of years. Many of those who entered back then had already returned. They didn't continue their seclusion here because there were some checkpoints that couldn't be broken through just by relying on the boundless flow of time. Most people had already reached the bottleneck of this life. If they wanted to break through, they needed a certain amount of luck and sudden enlightenment. Regardless of whether it was Ouyang Guilong, Yellow Cattle, Old Gu, the Black Yak, Li Jiuxiao, Ji Kaixin, and the others, they were all working hard to rise up during these years, their strength increasing rapidly. They really worked hard, and their own cultivation and realms had indeed advanced by leaps and bounds, obtaining world-shocking achievements. However, this was a resplendent golden age, but also the initial stage of the end of the world. No matter how strong they were, it would be useless and difficult for them to accomplish anything. Once the great ceremony began, the creatures at the end of the path would open their eyes and step into the heavens. Everyone would die, and even the great thousand cosmos would be overturned. If it really reached that step, even the Tao ancestors might not have the chance to make a move. Therefore, in recent years, Chu Feng brought Zhou Shi, Old Gu, Monkey Mi Tian, Yellow Cattle, Great Tiger of East, and a group of others to travel around the world, visiting famous figures, traveling great rivers and mountains, and comprehending the ancient scriptures of the predecessors. In short, he brought a group of friends and relatives to travel the world. To put it nicely, he experienced the beauty of the mountains and rivers, comprehended the various forms of the mortal world, and completely relaxed his heartstrings after many years of bitter cultivation. In fact, he was worried that one day he would never see them again. If there was great chaos, he didn't know where they would be and whether they could survive. Even Chu Feng himself didn't know his future fate. Could he endure it? Because he had made up his mind to kill the strange Tao ancestor. Since he couldn't avoid the great ceremony, he would fight to the death and find an opportunity to kill as many as he could. He had long since prepared to die in battle. He was willing to gather with these people. He didn't know what tomorrow would be like, and his heart was always full of reluctance. In the beginning, these people were very happy. After coming out of the state of bitter cultivation, they traveled the world together and could be said to be full of laughter. But as time passed, they also realized something, and their hearts couldn't help but feel a little heavy. Remember each other. No matter where you and I are in the future, whether or not we still exist in the world, our voices and smiles today won't fade and will forever remain in our hearts. When he heard this, Chu Feng sighed. He felt his heart was heavy. Since they had all realized something, it was meaningless to continue walking, and it would only add to their sadness. But when everyone heard that they were going to disperse, they were full of reluctance. "Let's go one more time, one last time," someone suggested. Chu Feng nodded and said, "Okay, then let's go to a special place this time and see if we can meet up with our extremely distant friends." In the Yang realm, the supreme 8 trigrams forbidden area. After seeing Chu Feng, the creatures here instantly changed their expressions. This wasn't the little cultivator from back then. He had cremated a Tao ancestor, and it was really frightening. Of course, they were glad that when Gu Qing's celestial heavens was first established, they had already responded and pledged allegiance. However, today, Chu Feng revisited the old place and didn't want to make things difficult for them. He had good words to negotiate and wanted to enter that special space. There was a connection with the heavens there, and if he knocked open the door, he might be able to talk to the people up there. Today, in this special space, the imprint left behind by the Empress had disappeared. As for the 2 grand cosmos-level herbs, they were also offered to the celestial heavens. Back then, Gu Qing had personally come to deal with the strange remnants here. "Is there anyone in the passage above?" Chu Feng shouted. It was even to the extent that he charged into the sky and personally shook the space with the special Tao markings. But after waiting for a long time, there was no response. That passage didn't open. In the end, he took out the stone zither and lightly smashed it a few times. After a long time there was finally movement in the passage. A gap was opened and a creature poked its head out to look down. Chu Feng immediately frowned. He actually felt a kind of deathly stillness. There seemed to be no one above. Finally, the creature that poked its head out of the passage asked in a somewhat stupefied manner, "Who are you?" "I'm Chu Feng." "I've never heard of you." The creature in the passage was a strong man with 3 heads and 6 arms. His race's bloodline was very powerful. "May I know if this place is close to Taoist Zhenting's residence, and how far is it from Luo Tianxian's sect?" Chu Feng asked. "You know Luo Tianxian?" The person above revealed a surprised expression. "Yes. If it's convenient, and if it's not too far from her, please help me tell her that an old friend, Chu Feng, wants to meet her." Chu Feng spoke. He also had an attitude of giving it a try. It would be good if it succeeded, but there was no loss if it failed. No one knew what the future would hold. If he thought of something now, he would try it. Chu Feng brought Yellow Cattle, Old Gu, and the others here to communicate with the Taoists of high heavens. Although it was somewhat presumptuous, he didn't think it was too inappropriate. Back then, the other party had invited them to discuss the path again. In this special era, he didn't know how long he could live and whether he would have the chance to meet the Taoists again. Hence, he came directly. Moreover, his evolution and cultivation had reached a special stage. If there were secret arts in high heavens or the experiences of predecessors, he might be able to comprehend by analogy and solve many problems. Many years had passed, and he had a good impression of Zhenting, Luo Tianxian, and the others. He wondered if he could meet them here. It didn't take long before Luo Tianxian actually arrived, along with Zhenting and a few other young evolved beings that he didn't know. In a gorgeous beam of light, these people descended and appeared in this special space. However, when Chu Feng saw them, he felt his scalp go numb. He felt uneasy and extremely strange. Why was this happening? He solemnly stood in front of Zhou Shi, Old Gu, Ouyang Dalong, and the others. In an instant, he knew what was going on. It didn't seem to be because of Luo Tianxian and the others. Something strange had happened behind him. Had that female ghost appeared? This time, the stone jar didn't come back to life, and no golden ripples appeared under his feet. However, a living being appeared on his body. What was going on? Had the female ghost appeared alone? Chu Feng felt a chill run down his spine. He wanted to confirm whether it was a female ghost or a monster with thick, long hair. Although he was scared, he was still very courageous. He reached behind him with both hands. However, this time, he didn't touch the long hair that was like steel needles, nor did he touch the pair of smooth long legs. Instead, he heard a faint sigh. Did that living being make a sound? It was indeed a woman. What happened next felt strange, mysterious, and dreamlike to Chu Feng. After he briefly introduced Luo Tianxian, Zhenting, and the others to the people on his side, the conversation between the two sides became extremely harmonious. The people who descended from high heaven were all Tao children and were very enthusiastic. They chatted happily with Zhou Shi, Yellow Cattle, Mi Tian, Old Gu, and the others, bringing up various problems on the path of evolution. As for Chu Feng, he sat opposite Luo Tianxian. They were very close, and he could clearly feel her unusual aura. Strangely, the people around them seemed to ignore the two of them, including Zhou Shi. They seemed to share the same interests as one of the female cultivators from high heaven and would occasionally laugh with each other. Chu Feng found that he and Luo Tianxian seemed to have separated themselves from the people around them. No one could affect or disturb them. The people nearby were clearly very close to them, but they treated the two of them like air, as if they had forgotten about them. Elder sister, long time no see. At this time, Luo Tianxian finally spoke. She was still as beautiful and graceful as ever, but the way she addressed him caused Chu Feng's scalp to go numb and his hair to stand on end. Goosebumps appeared all over his body. This was definitely not directed at him. Luo Tianxian could see that female ghost? Many eras have passed. I'm dead, and you're also having a hard time. You must have had a hard time holding on. A woman's faint voice came from behind Chu Feng. Sure enough, Luo Tianxian was talking to that female ghost. Chu Feng almost jumped up. He didn't want to stand between this person and ghost. This matter was too strange, and it was frightening to think about it. How could Luo Tianxian know the female ghost behind him? Moreover, the two of them were clearly talking to each other as equals. It was unimaginable. Chu Feng discovered that the people around them were indeed ignoring them, as if they hadn't heard or seen them. He really couldn't help but turn around. This time, he actually vaguely saw the female ghost and saw some kind of terrifying truth. It was indeed a woman. Her hair was disheveled, and her face couldn't be seen clearly. However, it was enough to cause one's imagination to run wild, and they couldn't help but think that she was the most beautiful woman in the world. The most terrifying thing was that she was lying in a pool of blood. Moreover, there were several coffins behind her. They were very far away, and he couldn't see them clearly. F***ck. At this moment, Chu Feng felt like his scalp was about to explode. He had seen this scene before, and it was too horrifying. He finally realized who this woman was. She was the one blocking the path of pollen evolution, a life form at the end of the road. She was suspected to have been killed by a strange creature countless years ago, and even the entire path of evolution had been contaminated. Although he had some vague guesses, after confirming that the female ghost was really her, Chu Feng was still incomparably shocked, and then his hair stood on end. Wasn't this woman already dead? Why could she still speak? Moreover, she had always been by his side all these years, and he had even carried her on his back. Following that, Chu Feng suddenly looked at Luo Tianxian. She could see the woman lying on the path of pollen, so who was she? She was definitely not a Taoist. Yes, I can't hold on much longer. The heavens are empty, and I should give up, Luo Tianxian replied, revealing a disappointed expression, and then endless sadness. What are you guys talking about? I don't understand. Chu Feng really wanted to shout, but after knowing what kind of life form this was, he knew his place and didn't act recklessly. Moreover, he was between the two women, and he felt that this special small world was very strange. There were traces of warm currents passing through. Was that their power? However, it didn't hurt him. It was also at this moment, when the warm currents spread, that Chu Feng's eyes seemed to temporarily open up a strange change that outsiders couldn't fathom. He actually saw many abnormalities and extremely terrifying scenes, as if what he was seeing now was the real world. Not far away, the faces of the Taoists were as pale as paper, and even their bodies were faint and hazy, looking very unreal. Ghosts? Chu Feng didn't dare to believe it. Then, he suddenly raised his head and looked at the passage that connected to the heavens. He stared hard and saw a part of the scenery in the heavens. What kind of world was that? It was lifeless, and although there was essence qi, it was entangled with strange substances. The entire world seemed to be on the verge of extinction. Luo Tianxian finally looked at Chu Feng, smiled at him, and said, "You want to see the heavens? The last time we fought." Chu Feng couldn't continue. This was clearly a life form at the end of the road. How could he have fought with her so many years ago? "That was me when I was young many epochs ago," Luo Tianxian said softly. "Then," she said, "you were able to fight me when I was young and of the same age, and you were able to win in the end. This is enough to prove that you are extraordinary." Her when she was young many epochs ago? Chu Feng realized that there were too many things that he didn't understand today, and it was subversive. "Let me take you to see the real heavens," Luo Tianxian said, and took Chu Feng up into the sky, turning into colorful lights. Below, Zhou Shi, Yellow Cattle, Old Gu, and the others were still unaware. Through the passage, Chu Feng followed Luo Tianxian into a vast world. The mountains and rivers were still there, but the whole world was deathly still. Occasionally, they could see stone tablets and ancient ruins under the grass. Many of the mountains were broken, but the spiritual qi didn't decrease much. But why did it give off such a strong feeling of death? The aura was quite mixed. Apart from the essence of heaven and earth, there was also the aura of death, and even strange substances that lingered with strands of ominous power. Look, this broken mountain was once the birthplace of an evolved civilization, Luo Tianxian pointed out. But what was left of this place? In the depths of the grass, under the soil, rubble, and countless wreckage lay among the ruins. The corner you see is enough to represent the whole of the heavens, Luo Tianxian said. The whole of the heavens is like this? Chu Feng's heart trembled. He still couldn't believe it. This was the heavens, but it had become a ruined land. Even the ancestral land of some evolved civilization was in such a state? But last time, I clearly saw that the heavens were full of talent. There were many immortal kings and Tao ancestors. How can you say that the heavens have been destroyed for a long time? Chu Feng had too many questions. Last time? You even fought with me. Now that you look back, do you still believe it? Luo Tianxian asked. What is going on? Chu Feng forced himself to ask. What he experienced today was too mysterious and too strange. During the battle, we actually wanted to guide the power of the heavens and invite the will of all living beings to enter the heavens, but we gave up in the end because we felt it was inappropriate. Luo Tianxian said, What you see is the result of our hard work. The waves on the river of time are reflected in the world from ancient times. Then, she added, only beings at the end of the road can see the true world of the heavens. Not even Tao ancestors have the ability to see through it. Then, she withdrew the warm energy from Chu Feng's body. He immediately saw a vast land with beautiful mountains and rivers. Many evolvers flew across the sky. The tallest mountain, not far away, was emitting the radiance of the great Tao. There were jade palaces everywhere and countless disciples. The mountain gate was majestic, and there were many immortal birds and auspicious beasts protecting this pure land. This kind of auspicious immortal residence was filled with spiritual mountains, brilliant divine lakes, and immortal mist. It was more like the atmosphere of the heavens. This. Chu Feng's heart trembled. This was the heavens he thought of. Just a corner of it was already prosperous and powerful. That was many years ago. The resplendence you see is the result of our hard work, Luo Tianxian said. Warm energy flowed through Chu Feng's body as he once again saw the real world. There was no such thing as a flourishing evolutionary orthodoxy. Everything was in ruins, and the broken walls and buildings were buried under the grass and soil. Many years ago, the heavens lost. Lives were lost and blood flowed like rivers. More than 80% of the beings of the end of the road died. The only ones left were me and the one who gave Gu Qing the projection of the 3 imperial weapons, Meng Hai. Even if it was a being at the end of the road, it could still be killed. As the saying went, as long as there was a thought, it could appear in the world again. Naturally, there was a way to break it. Otherwise, the number of beings at the end of the road would not have decreased since ancient times. If everyone could not be killed, it would go against the Tao. The few Taoists who died all left behind a trace of their spirit, hoping to come back to life. Meng Hai and I also wanted to restore the heavens. We used our great power to reenact the past, hoping to revive the other Taoists at the end of the road. However, the vile earth did not give us the chance. Reflecting the reality from ancient times and reenacting the past, making all the dead think that they were still alive and in their own glorious era? What kind of terrifying power was this? Her words shocked everyone. Was this the truth? However, they still failed in the end. 100 years ago, in the depths of the vile earth, the most mysterious and unfathomable ancestral land of the strange races, an unparalleled fluctuation was transmitted. In the end, 3 coffins appeared and illuminated the long river of history, destroying all of our efforts. After this battle, not to mention those who wanted to revive, even Meng Hai died a few years ago. In addition, the remaining 20% of the beings in the heavens had almost completely disappeared. No evolvers could be seen in the vast and boundless land. It was close to extinction. The great ceremony took place in the heavens, Luo Tianxian said solemnly. She barely managed to survive, but her own cultivation was damaged. She suffered the most serious corrosion. She endured bitterly and reflected the old scenes of the past. She walked from the ancient river of time and wanted to recover. What kind of method was that? Reflecting the present world in the ancient times and walking from death to return. If one was powerful enough, they could even revive a part of the heavens? The destruction of the heavens, Chu Feng said to himself. It was really difficult to accept and made his heart tremble. Unfortunately, it failed. I'm the only one left. Luo Tianxian sighed. Even if she could revive, it was impossible for her to bring the heavens back to the past. This place was already deathly still. At this moment, Chu Feng heard the words of the powerhouse who returned on the Emperor Bone. The heavens collapsed and the heavens died? At that time, whether it was Chu Feng or the other evolvers of the heavens, they all thought that the powerhouse said those words out of anger. They were angry that the heavens didn't save them and watch them die. Now, it seemed that what he shouted was the most simple and essential truth. Then, Chu Feng thought of the words of the strange beings. The general meaning was that the heavens couldn't hold on anymore and would become a ghost domain. After many years, this actually became true. Are the beings in the depths of the vile earth so powerful? Even the heavens were destroyed. There were endless sighs in Chu Feng's heart. It was really hard to believe. That's right. That's because even after the experts of the strange tribes die, they can still reappear and stay in this world. Even if we kill them many times, it's still not enough. This is all because of their ancestral land. They can walk out of there alive again. This is their greatest reliance. Immortal emperors were very difficult to kill, but there were still special places in this world. There were terrifying methods that could kill beings of this level. However, the ancestral land of the strange races was unsolvable. Luo Tianxian brought Chu Feng out of the heavens and returned to the lower realm. In this special small world, the others were still discussing the Tao. They didn't notice anything and were talking very happily. Chu Feng felt like he was out of this world. It was as if he was looking at a tragic comedy in a painting, and he had temporarily become an outsider. Sister, don't you really want to be resurrected? Luo Tianxian asked the woman who was lying in a pool of blood in the strange place. Although the hope isn't great, I have also manifested a body. However, it's not the reappearance of my past self, but a fusion with the present world. When Chu Feng heard this, he was shocked. Who was the figure of the woman on the road of pollen? Did he know her? Luo Tianxian said, My figure from the ancient times is still the young me. It's Luo Tianxian. She thinks that she's still living in that glorious era. It's time for me to let her fuse with this world. You didn't die. You survived and reflected the present world in the ancient times. Your cultivation will slowly recover, but the condition is that you don't support the old scene in the heavens anymore. Otherwise, you will implicate yourself, said the woman on the road of pollen. After that, she fell silent. How should I address you? Chu Feng looked at Luo Tianxian. Fellow Taoists of the same level call me Luo. You should call me by the name I used when I was young, Luo Tianxian, said Luo. Chu Feng hurriedly nodded. He wouldn't call her Luo even if he was beaten to death. Not many people dared to call her by her publicly recognized name. Otherwise, all sorts of unpredictable things would happen. Although the main character was right in front of him, she probably wouldn't do anything to him. However, Chu Feng felt that it was better not to touch some kind of taboo. Can I ask you a few questions? Asked Chu Feng. Luo directly refused and said, No. Chu Feng was stunned. He hadn't asked and hadn't said what the question was. Luo explained, "What you want to understand will definitely involve the beings of the Road of Pollen. If I help you with your divination, I might attract the attention of my enemies. My cultivation is severely damaged, and I might even die. Under these circumstances, I will naturally refuse to take the risk." Chu Feng was silent. His question did involve these things. As for the female ghost beside him, he couldn't count on her. She hadn't spoken to him for so many years. When the gathering ended, whether it was Zhou Shi, Old Gu, or the Black Yak, all of them were reluctant to part. That was because they shared similar interests with the simple and honest Taoists of the high heavens. They felt like they regretted not meeting sooner. Although they were parting, they were already looking forward to the next gathering. What could Chu Feng say? He could only reveal a bitter smile. Goodbye, the people who had been reflected from the ancient times to the modern world. They left and set foot on their way back. What would the future hold? Chu Feng felt that regardless of whether it was good or bad, everything was coming to an end. There would be a conclusion. His heart palpitated and he felt deeply uneasy. Perhaps an earth-shattering change was about to begin. The terrifying curtain was already slowly being pulled open. Chapter 1645. Chu Feng took Zhou Shi, Old Gu, Mi Tian, Black Yak, and the others with him, but they didn't walk fast. Along the way, his mood was complicated. There was the sadness of parting, but there was also a kind of horror and desolation that he didn't dare to think about. In particular, the latter made his heart suffer, and there was an indescribable sorrow. The world of the living is all real, isn't it? The heavens weren't reflected from ancient times by beings of the same level. He tried to convince himself. Along the way, whenever he thought of the scene he saw in high heaven, his mood fluctuated violently and he felt a kind of fear. Even high heaven had been destroyed and only Luo was left. He wondered whether the heavens of the past had actually perished. He couldn't help but think about it. He recalled some strange events in the past. One night, he saw a man who claimed to be the world champion for 10 generations. He shed tears of blood and said that the world was full of ghosts and that they were all dead. There were only a few living beings. On that day, Chu Feng was shocked and horrified, but he gradually calmed down those thoughts. Now that he had come from high heaven, how could he not think about the past? So, his heart trembled. Looking at Zhou Shi's bright and beautiful face, he was quite reluctant to part with her. Listening to the big Black Yak's bold and visionary words about killing his way into the depths of the vile earth, Chu Feng felt a wave of sourness. There was also Old Gu, Yellow Ox, and the others. Were you guys only reflections of ancient times? Were you all already dead? Although they were right in front of him, he felt a little far away. It was as if they were separated by thousands of rivers and mountains, separated by endless history, separated by a long scroll of time. Chu Feng wanted to roar. He didn't want his guess to be true. However, why did some signs keep reminding him that the worlds might have appeared because of the reflection of the divine light? He still remembered the debate between Nine Daoi and the Dog Emperor in front of the two-realm battlefield when they saw the endless specks of light rippling from the reincarnation road. At that time, they also mentioned that there was a scroll of the eternal sky. One side once said that the whole world was silent, that the entire era had already died, and that the world was full of ghosts, some kind of reflection. In addition, Luo also said not long ago that she wanted to lead the will of all living beings into high heaven, but they later gave up because they felt it was inappropriate. Did she discover something? The heavens were destroyed and turned into ruins. Were the heavens also in ruins? All the worlds, the great 1,000 worlds, had become ruins? Only weirdness was left. Was it real? He didn't want to think about it anymore. Chu Feng, what's wrong? Why are you crying? At this moment, Zhou Shi came over and hugged his arm, gently wiping away his tears. I'm just afraid that I won't be able to see you guys again. Chu Feng forced himself to calm down, But these words made his nose sting. That was because he was truly afraid that he would never see it again. If it was a reflection from the ancient times, how long would it be able to remain in this world? Don't be sad. A real man has nothing to fear. At worst, we'll just die in battle. We'll meet again in the next life, and we'll still be good brothers. The black yak patted Chu Feng's shoulder with a carefree manner. He didn't care about the future at all. Chu Feng recovered and tried to smile. However, he still sighed in his heart. He wanted to say to the black yak and the others, "I'm not afraid of dying in battle. I'm afraid that you guys have never been alive. You're all reflectors of the past, and have long since perished in the ancient times." Along the way, he looked at the people around him and felt more and more like he was standing outside the world, looking at the people in the painting. There was beauty there, boundless artistic conception, and his own life and sustenance. Yet, it was about to go far away. Chu Feng brought Zhou Shi, Old Gu, Yellow Cattle, and the others back to the Summer State's heavenly palace. He went straight to find Nine Dowie, the Dog Emperor, and the rotten corpse. His heart was stifled, and he wanted to find out the truth immediately. After finding the three old fellows who were like living fossils, Chu Feng got straight to the point. He didn't hide anything and directly told them the truth about the heavens, as well as his conjectures. He even touched the Dog Emperor's face and asked if it was true, or if it had long since rotted in the ancient times. The Dog Emperor was shocked at first, but then he became a little confused. Was this kid playing tricks? Did he eat a bear's heart and a leopard's gall? He dared to touch its face. A whoa! It opened its mouth and almost bit Chu Feng's palm, but it was slapped aside by Nine Dowie at the crucial moment. What you said is indeed related to the means of beings at the end of the road. It is mysterious and unfathomable, and it is frightening. However, I can tell you that we have flesh and blood. We are not reflections from the ancient times. We are all real. You think too much. Nine Dowie said a few words and made the final decision. He said that he now had proof. At the very least, the people around him, and the people present were all real. This included Zhou Shi, Old Gu, Yellow Cattle, and the others in the distance. When he heard this, Chu Feng felt as if a heavy burden had been lifted from his shoulders. He actually let out a long sigh. Before this, he was really anxious and even afraid. If he never had it, then it was nothing. If one day, everything that he treasured was completely cut off from his life, how sad and sorrowful would that be? Nine Dowie said that he could sense part of the nature of the world with the burial of the heavens diagram in his hand, and he corrected part of the viewpoint of the battle for the picture scrolls. The Dog Emperor said, "Actually, what you said, what you are worried about, is also somewhat reasonable. Because in this world, there are indeed some living beings that seem to have been reflected and resurrected." Then, it added, "You can also say that there are no dead people, and that they are all living beings." The decayed corpse said, "Even if there were reflections in the ancient times, it did not involve us. What should have happened has happened. Those who should have lived have come back to life, and those who should have died have passed away." Nine Dowie said, "You can understand it as the world of the living and the various worlds have been saved and illuminated by others. They should have succeeded or they should have failed and fallen. Even if there are ghosts, they are only remnants. Among the many living beings in the world, only a few were reflections." Their words seemed to give Chu Feng some peace of mind, and he no longer had to worry about those things. If that was the case, then the heavens had failed. Even if there were beings at the end of the road who had illuminated the world from ancient times, in the end, everything turned to ruins. There seemed to be such signs in the heavens. Perhaps they were saved by others, or perhaps they had failed, and it had long passed. Who had acted? It was most likely that person, as well as Celestial Emperor Yi and the Empress. What price had they paid? Why had they never returned? Overall, Chu Feng felt relieved, and his mood became much better. He no longer thought so much and went to find Zhou Shi, Old Gu, Yellow Cattle, and the others. He repeatedly reminded everyone that if there was a great battle, they must stay by the dog's side and not stray too far away. Recently, people felt that time was like a knife, slashing at their hearts every day. Because they had a premonition, they were anxious. A corner of the future had already been drawn. Even though they knew that the various worlds had fallen and there was no hope, everyone still made preparations for battle. Under such a great atmosphere, the hearts of all races were shrouded in a haze, and the whole world became much quieter. The more time passed, the more nervous people became. Some of the old immortal kings instinctively sensed that there seemed to be a huge creature slowly opening its eyes and starting to pay attention to the various worlds. Once a creature at the end of the road appeared, who could resist? Could Celestial Emperor Yi, the Empress, and the others return and save the worlds once again, stopping the great ceremony and the arrival of the end of the world, allowing the world to be at peace for a period of time? Only after some thought, people shook their head. This was most likely impossible to achieve. Last time, Celestial Emperor Yi and the Empress most likely saw that a supreme creature was about to walk out of the vile earth and overturn the heavens, so they killed their way in. They had already done their best. Even until today, there was still no news of them, causing everyone to be afraid and worried, fearing that the worst outcome would appear. Even though no one mentioned it, many experts felt fear in their hearts, fearing that the two would fall into the vile earth, and as time passed, under such a great background, many people were already in despair. They knew that the heavens and earth would fall apart, that there would be endless blood and chaos, but they were powerless to resist and couldn't see a trace of hope. How could they not feel depressed? During this period, the number of evolvers walking everywhere had clearly decreased. Many old monsters had sensed it and were all waiting for the arrival of the final heavenly change. Whether it was good or bad, what would come in the end. Then they would just fight. Chu Feng, Nine Daos, the Dog Emperor, Gu Qing, and the others, as well as the various immortal kings were all in the central heavenly palace, studying the situation. Burial pit, it really is a pit. A creature at the end of the road might have been born there, said the old man who created the scripture of time. Today, he spoke frankly. His scripture of time was actually obtained near the burial pit, and there was suspected to be a creature inside that was transforming towards the end of the road. This made everyone's scalps go numb. This was definitely not some good news. How many years had passed? That creature was most likely about to succeed, right? Burial pit, soul river, underworld, four extremes floating earth. Once the great ceremony began, these places could all be considered the outposts of the strange races. Nine Daos sighed and spoke the truth, saying, "If there are no experts at the end of the road appearing on our side, thinking so much is useless. After dispersing in a while, everyone should go and make preparations." He didn't say what to prepare, but everyone knew that this was a tactful reminder to make arrangements for the future. Not long after, Zhou Shi's face was filled with a bright smile. Her whole person seemed to be covered in a layer of divine radiance. She happily found Chu Feng and whispered to him that she was going to be a father. What? Chu Feng was shocked and then incomparable joy. His long-cherished wish of many years had come true. They were about to have a child. Chu Feng gently hugged her, extremely excited. The news quickly spread. Mi Tian, the big black yak, Old Gu, Dong Dahu, and the others all rushed over to congratulate him. They were truly happy for him. Nine Daos, the carrion corpse, Gu Qing, and various immortal kings also came to congratulate him. Of course, the fastest to arrive was the Dog Emperor. He circled around Zhou Shi and muttered, but Chu Feng finally heard him. This dog was going to abduct his child and carefully study and raise it. Chu Feng's face immediately darkened. He absolutely had to keep an eye on this dog. However, the Dog Emperor boldly told Chu Feng that it was safest to stay by his side at this stage. Otherwise, the entire world might turn into ruins. In fact, the Dog Emperor's words carried an inauspicious attribute. In just a few days, the world really did undergo a bad change. The number of strange substances increased dramatically. A faint blood-red light sprinkled down from the sky, and cloud-like gray fog floated over. Everything was changing toward an inauspicious sign. Half a month later, a boundless and oppressive force seemed to have awakened in an endless ancient land. It radiated outward, wanting to destroy all tangible substances. What is that? 2 days later, someone was horrified to find that the sky seemed to have faded, turning into a bubble-like substance. In that endless mysterious land, something was gradually becoming clear, appearing through the bubble-like sky. On this day, it was the same everywhere. People from all the great worlds trembled and panicked, feeling that a shocking change was about to happen. It was a blood-red sacrificial altar that had appeared from the boundless void, illuminating the world. Although it was blurry, people could already feel its majesty, as well as that kind of frightening aura. An ancient and mysterious sacrificial altar dripping with blood had suddenly appeared. It made people's hearts tremble, and their souls were frightened to the extreme. At this moment, no matter who or where they were, they all had a premonition that the end of the world was coming. The great sacrifice is about to begin. A cold voice came from the depths of the vile earth and spread to all the world. As expected, what should come had come, but no one had thought it would be so direct. Would the world be empty when the blood-red sacrificial altar was revealed? All of you, stay by Senior Dog Emperor's side. Don't think about doing your part because this time, it's meaningless for those below the Immortal King level to take action. Even if you want to fight, wait until all the seniors in front have died in battle. Don't add to the chaos. Chu Feng was incomparably strict. He warned the Black Yak and the others that although it was good to be hot-blooded, it might not necessarily be effective. If there were strange creatures of the same level attacking, then he would allow these people to fight. When the time came, they would fight with their last bit of blood and bones. That way, even if they died, they wouldn't have any regrets. Everyone opened their mouths, wanting to say something, but they all became silent again. At this stage, they were already clear about what they should and shouldn't do. Stay and live. Only then will there be hope of rising up in the future. All of you are seeds. In the future, you will take revenge for your predecessors. The decayed corpse roared. Even Gu Qin came, warning the younger generation not to participate in the battle. They would wait until all the older generation died in battle. Gu Qin couldn't endure it anymore. He actually became impulsive and wanted to fight. The blood-red sacrificial altar became larger and larger, as if it was going to crush the world. It also became clearer and clearer, and people gradually saw the patterns on its surface. At this time, the color of blood was converging and being absorbed by the altar itself. That was the remnant blood of the past, the substance left behind after the sacrifices of the past. Its body was actually pitch black like ink. It was incomparably terrifying, as if it could absorb all light in the world. Below it was the endless world sea, vast and boundless. That is, Sacrifice Sea. Nine Daos was shocked. Sacrifice Sea, the place where immortal emperors sacrificed themselves. Meanwhile, in the very depths there was a grand sacrificial altar, and this was what they were seeing now? It was rumored that once anyone went up that altar, they would be viewed as a sacrifice, difficult for them to survive. The great sacrifice has begun. All things in this world, this universe's great wastelands, from past to present, everything can be sacrificed. There will always be things your distinguished self cares about that can be offered up. A drawn-out and ancient voice sounded, shocking all worlds. Everyone's scalps went numb. Nine Daos, Dog Emperor, and the others' expressions also became nervous. Once the great sacrifice began, there would most likely not be anything left in this world. Regardless of whether it was the things that illuminated the present world in the past or what remained, this time, everything might truly be ruined. At this time, in the depths of the vile earth, Endless blood light rushed into the heavens, tearing apart the inauspicious land. The surrounding great dark cosmos was split apart. It was as if someone was going to slaughter their way out. However, there were shadows everywhere, some terrifying figures standing in the way, surrounding the area where the bloody light was. Boundless darkness submerged that place. Nine Daos immediately roared, "Heavenly Emperor Yi and the Empress are still fighting a bloody battle in the vile earth. They are both still alive, and regardless of whether they return or not, they are our hope. Everyone, do not despair, do not sink into depravity. From the day the heavens change, kill." However, reality was ruthless. With a boom, a certain great world was pierced through, and the heavens of the darkness immortal domain exploded. A large hand that was pitch black like ink and covered the entire world reached down. When it pressed down mercilessly, mountains and rivers collapsed and the earth exploded. Even though fallen immortal kings defied the heavens and rushed towards that large hand, it was futile. Their bodies disintegrated in midair, exploding into a large expanse of bloody rain. Behind countless people, in that great world, all of the evolved beings were in grief and indignation, but they were powerless to reverse the situation. The fallen immortal domain was originally close to darkness. Some of the fallen immortal kings were about to submit to the strange races, but in the end, they withdrew their steps and joined the side of the heavens. In the end, they were the first to suffer a calamity when it had just begun. A Tao ancestor's large hand reached down and pierced through this world, wanting to exterminate all living beings. Rumble! The large black hand lightly shook, and countless evolved beings in the fallen immortal domain disintegrated. Many of them were still youths or children, and they collapsed just like that. Then, a large number of strange races and dark creatures poured in from the broken sky like a tide, pouncing towards the earth, wanting to cut down everything in their way. The large black hand slowly retreated, not intending to destroy this world. It wanted to go to another world to break through the barrier of the various great worlds in the heavens. They only wanted a great sacrifice, and all the races would be sacrificed. Strands of blood-red light could be seen rising up and entering the grand altar that was illuminated by the light. "Bastards, I'll kill you all!" Nine Daos rushed up. Even though he couldn't stop everything just now, he had already locked onto his target and rushed towards the owner of the large black hand to kill. Boom! At the same time, when he approached, he didn't forget to attack the surging dark creatures and strange races, destroying countless of them. Dong! The heavens collapsed and the earth split. Nine Daos and a black figure encountered each other outside the world. There was nothing to say, and they directly fought to the death. "It's futile. How many people do you have? My clan's experts are as numerous as trees in a forest. Do you want to fight? Then send more Tao friends." The black voice spoke coldly. Boom! Many figures flew over from the vile earth's direction. They didn't target Nine Daos, but rather separately took action against the other great worlds. Heaven and earth overturned, all great worlds continuously collapsing. The heavens were completely torn apart by those large hands. When immortal kings rushed up, they all directly exploded, unable to stop them at all. Gu Qing also rushed out, roaring loudly, no longer as cautious as before. Instead, his hair was disheveled, and he was in a berserk state. With a Hong sound, he collided with a Tao ancestor from the outer realms, erupting with endless energy. Great Tao order and other things continuously collapsed. Even though his entire body was covered in blood, his body in tatters, the enemy didn't have it easy either. Blood flowed out from his mouth and nose. Kill! This old man's father, the one who traveled shoulder to shoulder with the 3 heavenly emperors, was killed by you all. Today, even if this old man's blood runs dry, bones all broken, soul scattered, I will still settle things with you all. I won't rest until one of us is dead. Come! Gu Qing roared like a mad demon. Many years of suppression, many eras of dormancy, all of it erupted in an instant. He was bathed in blood and had long since prepared to die. When he saw this scene, Chu Feng took out the life seed that Gu Qing had given him, turned around, and handed it to the Dog Emperor, saying, "I know that even if some heavenly emperors fall, you can still live and protect them. Also, Zhou Shi, Yellow Cattle, and the others are all in Senior's hands. I will also participate in the battle. I might die." The Dog Emperor shouted. At this time, he carried the Emperor corpse on his back, and held the broken monarch bell, ready to fight at any time. There were also rotting corpses, carrying bronze coffins, ready to attack. When Chu Feng turned around, Zhou Shi cried loudly behind him, "You have to come back alive, even if for no other reason. You have to see our child." She was really afraid that Chu Feng would leave and never return. "All right." Chu Feng nodded forcefully. Regardless of whether he could survive or not, he had to calm her heart, and the hearts of everyone else. "Come, all of you, awaken and take my body!" Chu Feng roared. Up until now, he still hadn't used the mighty power on his body. He couldn't bear it anymore. In his current state, he rushed into the sky and killed his way into outer space. He wanted to force himself into danger, so how could the strange power in his body not awaken? Boom! When he saw a tall figure standing in the gray mist, the other party also stared at him. Suddenly, there was a boundless pressure like the collapse of mountains and seas, and the fall of the universe, pressing down on him. At this moment, golden patterns interweaved under Chu Feng's feet, and a sigh came from behind him. He obtained that mighty power, and immediately scattered the gray mist, rushing towards the tall figure. But the outer realm Tao ancestors far outnumbered the heavens, and a group of people came. It was too terrifying, tearing apart the worlds, and the worlds couldn't resist at all. Judeoyi went crazy, Gu Qing was covered in blood, and even Chu Feng was bathed in blood, but it was useless. There were too many enemies, and their destructive power was shocking. Chi. At this time, streak after streak of bloody light rushed out from the vile earth like sharp blades, piercing through the dark cosmos and arriving in the world. Then, with piu-piu sounds, those streaks of bloody light pierced through the strange Tao ancestors, and then they exploded, some directly collapsing. "That's Yi Tiandi and the Empress' blood? Even the Celestial Emperor is bleeding, so why are you and I struggling? Kill, wipe out the strange race!" Countless people roared and shouted. Many evolvers soared into the sky. Even though they couldn't do much, they were still able to influence many people. In particular, the Tao ancestors broke through the world, and then the strange army marched straight into those regions. The native evolvers went crazy, all of them going to fight. The decayed corpse roared, "Main Soul, you bastard, where are you? Are you dead?" Old Yi and the Empress are fighting with their lives on the line, both bleeding and deep in the vile earth. "Where the hell did you go? Come out!" He had just carried the Emperor's coffin, directly rushing into the clouds, but in the end, he was slapped down by a palm, his body exploding. If not for the divine radiance flowing through the Emperor's coffin, allowing him to recover, he would have died. The decayed corpse was furious, howling in the sky. "Come, this Tao grandpa has been fighting all this time. Do you think I'm slacking off?" While speaking, the reincarnation paths collapsed one after another. There was a fat Taoist covered in blood and injuries everywhere. His hair was disheveled, and he rushed out with the corpse of a silver-haired girl on his back. He slaughtered his way towards the outer realm Tao ancestors while crying, roaring angrily, "Return my little rabbit's life! I've dug up the entire underworld, but I only found her ice-cold corpse. Exterminate the strange, eliminate the inauspicious, all of you die." What he carried on his back was the lunar jade rabbit from the ancient Chaos era. She was once his best friend, but in the end, she had long become an ice-cold corpse. "The little rabbit is dead?" The decayed corpse roared angrily, rushing into the heavens, bringing along the copper coffin. He flew towards the fat Taoist, wanting to become one with him. In the end, there was also the little Taoist, the child of Chu Feng and Qin Luoyin. After many years, he had long grown into a youth and also merged with them. Roar. An incomparably oppressive roar came from the outside world. The decayed corpse frantically transformed, no longer rotting, and instead became an angry Taoist priest. He slaughtered towards the outer realm Tao ancestors. With a bang, a certain Tao ancestor was blasted apart by him. Trash, you actually aren't an immortal emperor. After so many years, what have you been doing, main soul? You actually haven't reached the end of the road domain. He was scolding himself. Do you think it's so easy to step into the end of the road domain? Since you can't become an immortal emperor, then become the first Tao ancestor. Kill. He roared again. The fat Taoist went crazy from killing in the outside world. At this time, 9 Tao's heaven burial diagram suddenly exploded, swallowing 2 Tao ancestors alive. At the crucial moment, he finally used this great killing weapon, killing 2 great experts in one go. His mouth was full of bloody foam as he laughed loudly and said, "Even if I die, it's worth it." Normally speaking, killing a Tao ancestor would require a long period of refinement before one could die. Clearly, his heaven burial diagram was strange as it directly killed 2 great Tao ancestors. Gu Qing went all out. His body was tattered, and his opponent was also covered in cracks. He was going all out. Go to hell. Chu Feng roared angrily. He spun the stone zither and took out the time furnace. Finally, he stuffed a Tao ancestor inside and began to cremate him. The decayed corpse roared, "Brothers, don't be afraid. Hold on, I've already recovered the underworld and the reincarnation road. That place has been pacified by me. Moreover, I've found my own people and rescued them from the black prison. In a while, they'll slaughter their way out of the underworld after washing it with blood." Kill. At this time, battle cries came from the underworld. There really was a large number of figures rushing into the sky to meet the strange army. Motherf *Ker, let's go all out. Since you've all gone crazy from killing, I guess I've long since been seen through as a spy. I announce that the Soul River has also been recovered. It has been pacified by me. Someone roared. Golden light erupted from the Soul River. Back then, the Silkworm Emperor rushed into the sky. Behind him, heads tumbled everywhere as the strange creatures continuously exploded. Everyone was dumbstruck. The Soul River had been pacified by the Silkworm Emperor, who had been thought to have fallen into darkness. Breaking this place isn't a big deal. Even though this place is quite special, with immortal emperors watching over it from time to time, it's practically empty now. The main sacrifice has been killed, so this place has become my territory. The Silkworm Emperor roared. Enough. Someone shouted coldly from the depths of the vile earth. Moreover, a scarlet eye opened, filling the cosmos. In an instant it arrived outside the world and wasn't too far away. An immortal emperor-level entity had appeared? It seemed like he couldn't watch on anymore and wanted to take action personally. At this time, everyone's hopes turned to dust. They truly couldn't withstand that kind of pressure. Who could stop it? A Lu Jin-level entity had appeared. One person was enough to destroy the heavens and 10,000 worlds. Your grandfather has come to kill you. The darkness immortal emperor of the past, an expert who had returned by stepping on an emperor's bone, appeared again. Of course, before he spoke, he had already rushed over and had already taken action. It was as if he had planned this. With a hong sound, the strange immortal emperor that had just appeared outside the world directly exploded. Emperor's blood filled the sky. However, the darkness immortal emperor had no choice but to flee again because there was a vicious tiger chasing after him for many years, never giving up. Before him, even though he had blasted apart that strange immortal emperor, the other party definitely hadn't died. A Lu Jin-level entity wasn't that easy to kill. If he was caught in a pincer attack, not to mention not being able to help the heavens, even he himself would be in danger. Moreover, this place would become an immortal emperor-level battlefield that could destroy everything. He had no choice but to disappear again. As expected, the strange immortal emperor had revived, instantly reappearing at his original location. His gaze was incomparably cold as he began to scan the heavens. Moreover, what made everyone uneasy was that another Lu Jin-level entity from a strange race had arrived. He headed towards the grand black altar, wanting to personally preside over the great sacrifice. Chi. Suddenly, in the ruined chaotic cosmos adjacent to the little Een realm, a rain of light condensed on a ruined wooden city, forming a yellowed letter. It tore through heaven and earth, flying over with extreme speed, arriving outside the world. With a pu sound, that strange race's Lu Jin-level entity that was about to ascend the altar exploded, blasted apart by that yellow paper. However, the paper was also completely destroyed. "It's that person's talisman?" someone said softly from the depths of the vile earth. It was quite astonishing. The talisman seemed to carry immeasurable power, actually killing an immortal emperor. Unfortunately, the supreme power it carried was exhausted in the end. "Since it makes people despair, then I'll just kill until I go mad. Dao friends, I'll go first, go crazy, kill!" The decayed corpse roared, truly going mad. He wanted to kill as many Dao ancestors as he could. Just now, he had already blasted apart 2. Moreover, he cooperated closely with Chu Feng, collecting them into the furnace of time and burning them. "Right, even if we are going to die, we are going to die in battle." Countless people replied. "I've come. I was previously known as the ruler of the world for 10 eras, but was imprisoned in the underworld. Today, I will kill a few Dao ancestors to wash away my humiliation." Someone roared angrily. It was precisely the male Chu Feng saw that night. He had previously said that the Yang realm was full of malicious spirit. "Once you all take action, you will all disappear into thin air. Your bodies have long been imprinted with the underworld's imprints." A strange Dao ancestor shouted. "If I was scared of death, I wouldn't have appeared before you all. After waiting for so many years, wasn't it all for the sake of killing enemies?" That male said. The decayed corpse even more so roared out, "This Dao Grandpa's main soul has personally unraveled the restrictions, reviving their fighting strength. It's enough to support several great battles. Killing a few Dao ancestors isn't an issue at all. Kill." There was also a terrifying prehistoric creature, actually a heavenly horned ant. He turned into human form, his divine force matchless. After a great roar, he tore apart Dao ancestors with his bare hands, bathed in blood as he went crazy. Meanwhile, at this time, that man who was known as the ruler of the world for 10 eras was also fighting intensely, blasting apart a strange Dao ancestor. Chu Feng was as fast as lightning, not feeling embarrassed at all. He used the time furnace to collect the ruined bones and true blood, even more so forcefully stuffing souls inside. He was doing everything he could to cremate them. At #Yen, the bizarre life forms were enraged and one of them barked, "Kill that Daofather fire first." Chu Feng stared blankly for a moment before reacting. Were they talking about him? What kind of shitty title was this? He wouldn't accept it. The great battle was extremely bitter. In the end, Gu Qingdao collapsed because there were just too many Dao ancestors from the strange races. 2 more came to surround and hunt him down, vowing to completely obliterate him. After he collapsed, under the suppression of several Dao ancestors, he couldn't condense again. Chu Feng's eyes immediately became red. Finally, the people at his side were going to die one after another. "Hurring!" A cold snort sounded. That strange immortal emperor released a cold snort, immediately making all of the creatures of all clans tremble, unable to help but kneel down. Moreover, another strange immortal emperor already ascended the massive black altar, about to host the great sacrifice. Little Qing. In the Yang realm, the Dog Emperor's eyes were about to pop out of their sockets. No matter what, he was still someone from the same generation as Gu Qing's father, and Gu Qing usually called him uncle. The Dog Emperor was furious and desperate. He carried the Emperor's corpse on his back, held the broken bell in his hand, and directly rushed to the outer realm, not caring about anything else. With a boom, he smashed the broken bell towards the Tao ancestors. However, at this moment, a bloody light rushed up from his body, directly penetrating the immortal Emperor from the outer realm, causing his head to crack and shatter. Yeezy, the trump card you left for me is really useful. Is it your imperial blood? How satisfying! I smashed that immortal Emperor's head like breaking a chamber pot, even though I'm about to die at his hands. The Dog Emperor laughed maniacally. As expected, that strange immortal Emperor's head instantly recovered, and he directly stared at the Dog Emperor. This kind of gaze was enough to kill him. However, the broken bell rumbled, blocking in front of him, and at this moment it exploded. However, as the bell exploded, in the river of time, there was another earth-shattering bell sound. Then, waves of time splashed, blocking the strange, immortal Emperor from the outer realm. At this time, the Emperor's corpse on the Dog Emperor's back actually slowly stood up, opened his eyes, and released a boundless might. The strange immortal Emperor stared at him and said, "In the battle all those years ago, my clan felt that you were about to break through, so we killed you. I didn't expect that your corpse, which drifted in the river of time, could actually have a spirit. Now, there is a mark in the river of time that resonates with your corpse. You've reached this realm? No, you're still dead. This Tao fruit is just some kind of sustenance, a kind of final radiance before death, fulfilling your past wishes. You will die in one battle. Go back." The man on the Dog Emperor's back stood up. Although his body was filled with the aura of decay, the immortal Emperor's Tao had formed in his origin. However, the Tao was covered in cracks, and there was an ominous power eroding it. It seemed to confirm the strange, immortal Emperor's words, that he would die in one battle. Great Emperor! Hot tears rolled down the Dog Emperor's cheeks as he growled. Boom! The Emperor's corpse's right hand grabbed at the river of time in the void, and a large bell appeared. It was engraved with complex runes and endless patterns, dazzling and dazzling. He directly disappeared, and the large bell rang out, suddenly covering the immortal Emperor on the other side. With a clang, a boundless mist of blood erupted from inside. This shocked the world. However, the strange immortal Emperor's body reappeared, and he was still as cold as ever. He said, "You won't be able to hold on for long, even if you fight with your life on the line, it's useless. To my clan, there is no such thing as mutual destruction, there is no such thing as fear." However, what awaited him was an even more domineering attack from the Emperor's corpse. The river of time rolled back, drowning him, and he himself also stepped in, blasting towards the strange, immortal Emperor. Bang! There, a large amount of strange blood splashed out. The Dog Emperor sobbed and roared, "At the end of the path of immortals, who is the peak? Seeing no beginning, the Tao becomes empty." The heavens shook. Many old immortal kings also roared. How could they not know of this Emperor's glorious past? This was someone who stood side by side with the heavenly Emperor Yi and the great Empress, known as the Three Heavenly Emperors. Had he returned today? However, it made people feel endless sorrow because, according to the strange immortal Emperor, his battle was coming to an end. Boom! The Emperor's corpse's back was facing all living beings, and he faced the outside world alone. He walked forward without looking back, and once again, he blew up the strange, immortal Emperor. However, his own body also became a bit dimmer. Kill. Seeing no beginning, the Tao becomes empty. Countless people shouted, and then they charged towards the strange army. Chu Feng was also fighting with his life on the line. He also saw Li Su, Yao Yao, and the others. They were avoiding the Tao ancestors, and they were fighting among the strange creatures, their bodies covered in blood. The great battle royale of the heavens, but there were too few high-level combat power. Rumble! At this moment, a special reincarnation path collapsed and exploded. The clay idol sitting at the end of the reincarnation path was roused, revived, and directly joined the battle. Moreover, there were 9 vermilion ancient coffins that came out with him. However, the coffins were not opened, and the person inside seemed to have a problem. He directly used the coffin to rush around. Inside the coffin, it was suspected that the son of that person was sleeping in the coffin after his death. Crack! The vile earth split open. Celestial Emperor Yi and the Empress used their techniques, tearing apart countless dark universes. A brilliant rain of light shot out from the Empress. A flower blooms with a single thought, a monarch descends upon the world. A large expanse of light rain landed on the grand black altar with a boom, and a stunning flower blossomed. From within, an immortal fetus walked out. That was the Empress's clone. Kill. She personally took action, and she fought the strange race's end-of-road level creature that was presiding over the great ceremony on the black altar. However, this kind of wondrous technique of hers still had a time limit. She blew up the other party several times, and she herself was also growing dim. In the end, it wasn't her main body that personally came. As expected, in the end, after she blew up the other party once again, she also turned into a rain of light and dissipated into the distance. Boom! A blood cauldron suddenly flew out from the vile earth. It had 3 legs and 6 handles, forged by Celestial Emperor Ye's blood energy. It attacked the altar, and with a bang, that person exploded once again. It's useless. My clan is evergreen, never scared of indiscriminate destruction. Even if we are truly wiped out, we can still walk out from our ancestral land. This is precisely our backing. That is why we are eternally present in this world, no clans able to match us. The figure on the altar said coldly, not minding the fact that he was killed several times. In the distance, the Emperor corpse was still fighting, exposing his back to the world. He would forever face the most powerful enemy. He continued forward, bathed in the strange, immortal Emperor's blood, fighting unendingly. In the heavens, Patriarch Meng's body was similarly covered in blood, the ground covered in blood and bones. His bravery was astonishing. Right now, he was emotional, carrying endless sorrow as he said, invading my homeland, killing my disciples, stirring up blood and flames and chaos. Is the destruction of the strange endless? Even though we are still alive, we still haven't dealt with the great disaster in this world. Then, Patriarch Meng wrote scriptures in blood, and then burned them in the void. He also shouted loudly, "Child, you are there? Huang, do you hear me? I am calling your name, why don't you return?" Finally, someone called out that person's name. The entire world immediately became quiet. Heavenly Emperor Huang, come back! 9 Daoi also roared out. Child, Huang, where are you? Do you hear my call? Patriarch Meng's voice was overcast, incomparably sorrowful. I am here, I have always been here. Suddenly, someone quietly replied. The voice wasn't loud, but everyone in the heavens heard it, ringing by everyone's ears. What? Even the strange races were shocked. He had always been here? At this time, outside the world, a certain region that was the darkest immediately became brilliant, illuminating the heavens until it became transparent. Then, many powerful evolved beings saw that person. He stood there, his entire body covered in blood, seriously injured, but he still towered between heaven and earth, towering without falling. On the other side of him, there were 3 great unimaginable existences standing shoulder to shoulder, collapsing the long river of time, erasing all tangible things. 3 great ancestors? There were even people from the strange creatures who cried out in alarm. In this world, there were rumors circulating within the strange races that the clan's most powerful existences would all revive and return. Was there any discrepancy now? Could it be that the three great ancestors would end their battle and return? Those three inconceivable existences also had all types of great Tao injuries on their bodies, continuously dripping blood. However, they didn't care, because in the endless distance behind them, there were three coffin void images. It was as if they were resting on a plateau, providing the three great ancestors with endless power. I've killed some of them, but they will still revive in the end. That person said quietly. What? The strange races were shocked. Even the unmatched ancestors had been killed before? Borrowing the ancestral land to revive? Child. Patriarch Meng couldn't help but shed tears. The youth in his eyes had always been fighting, facing inconceivably powerful enemies. Great ceremony, continue. There seemed to be an unmatched existence in the vile earth, giving this order. There were strange, immortal emperors who appeared, walking towards the altar, preparing to sacrifice the heavens. Those who ascend the altar will die. Huang spoke, simple and direct. However, the three great ancestors on the other side laughed, one of them saying, Can you still interfere with the present world? The second ancestor also spoke, looking towards the world, saying, Perhaps you all still don't know, but the heavens and high heavens had perished at the same time. It was him, Huang, who illuminated that world in the ancient times, forcibly saving all of you from that world. It was truly extraordinary. You have to understand that even the joint efforts of several supreme existences in high heavens failed. However, he himself was also weakened. High Heaven's Luo was incomparably shocked after hearing this. He accomplished all of this with his own power? So, he is powerless to continue fighting. Who else can he threaten? The third ancestor said. Patriarch Meng immediately roared in anger, incomparably sorrowful. Then, that strange, immortal emperor directly ascended the grand black altar. Boom! However, in the next instant, a gigantic palm appeared out of nowhere. Before the strange, immortal emperor could react in time, it grabbed him in the palm and dragged him away. Blood gushed out, and he never returned to the strange, immortal emperor. Kill. At this time, the depths of the vile earth suddenly erupted. Heavenly Emperor Yi and the Empress were covered in blood, actually slaughtering their way out, quickly heading towards Heavenly Emperor Huang, wanting to face the three great ancestors together. Boom! The outside world exploded, and people couldn't see anything. In the heavens, the evolvers of various races also went crazy, desperately counterattacking, killing towards the strange race. The Tao ancestor battle also reached a climax. Chu Feng was covered in blood, not counting the Tao ancestors he had cremated for others. He himself had already killed 4. Am I going to die? He was disappointed and frustrated. This wasn't his power in the end, and moreover, it could only stimulate Tao ancestor-level power. After all, the woman on the road of pollen had long died, and the remaining couldn't even be considered a spirit. As for the stone jar, it was ultimately just an artifact. The power it provided for Chu Feng didn't cross the natural chasm to the immortal emperor level. Kill. Chu Feng roared, once again attacking. After an unknown period of time, he looked back at the world of the living, looking for those familiar people, and roared, Dog Emperor, protect them. He saw Zhou Shi, who was currently waving at him with a face full of tears. She wanted to rush out, but she was firmly held back. I want to live, I want to see our child, she cried. Chu Feng, Old Gu, the Black Yak, Mi Tian, and the others roared. All of you leave. The Dog Emperor let out a roar of grief and indignation. Then, light began to shine, and with a boom, those people were enveloped, gradually becoming blurry and disappearing. However, in a trance, it seemed that a silver-haired figure ran out and didn't leave. Roar. The Dog Emperor couldn't care so much. With a loud roar, he rushed towards the outside world, ready to fight to the death. Boom. In the sky, all kinds of laws interweaved, and Tao ancestor-level energy boiled. In the end, in order to save Jiudaoyi, Chu Feng smashed the stone jar and waved the stone zither to attack. Then, he saw the dog emperor disintegrate, explode, and die in the outer realm. He also saw more people die. In the end, he also fell, his vision turning black, and he fell into eternal darkness. Chapter 1646. An ice-cold wind blew past, stirring up sand and dust. The grass beneath the soil was swept up and filled the sky. The earth was barren and devoid of life, and no signs of human habitation could be seen within 1,000 miles. In the distance, there was a silver-haired woman with tears in her eyes as she dug the earth unceasingly. At first, she seemed to be searching like a madwoman, but after that, she became like a machine. She did this every day. She had been digging in this ice-cold frozen earth for a whole 25 years. Her footprints were left behind in a perimeter of several thousands of kilometers. If a mortal woman experienced 25 years, her youth would have long since faded, and her black hair would be dyed snow. How many people could persist in digging endlessly like this? Why? It has to be here. I want to find you. I want to take care of you while you're alive, and I want to accompany you when I die. She cried loudly again. 25 years had passed since that battle, and every day, she felt as if her heart was being cut by a knife. Every time she recalled the final scene from back then, she felt suffocated and her entire body turned ice-cold. She herself was unconscious for many days and only woke up after more than a month. In the end, she saw a scene of desolation everywhere. The earth was covered in blood-stains, countless corpses, mountains and rivers were shattered, and all the heroes were gone. Only broken bones and dried blood were left behind. They were modeled and recorded the sorrow of the past. Ing Xiaoxiao cried loudly for a long time before she started to move again. She clearly remembered that he fell on this land that day. She searched madly for over 20 years, but why couldn't she find him? There were many withered bones in the excavated ground. It was an endless sorrow, and she really didn't want to recall the circumstances of that final battle. The Dog Emperor wanted to send them away, but she couldn't bear to do so. She was afraid that an accident would happen to him because she had long since seen the farewell in his eyes. They might not meet again in this lifetime. So, she rushed out of the light screen at the last moment. She wanted to stay no matter what. Even if she died, she wanted to stay with him on this land. Big Brother Chu Feng, where are you? I've been looking for you for many years. Ing Xiaoxiao cried. There weren't many living beings within a perimeter of 500 kilometers. A large area of the land was barren. Whether it was the population or the vitality of the land, both had sharply decreased by more than 90%. Another 2 years passed, and Ing Xiaoxiao was still digging unceasingly. She wanted to dig through the entire land. Even if she saw the most unacceptable outcome, she would still continue. Why is my power getting weaker and weaker? Why is the essence of heaven and earth, and all kinds of spirit chi getting thinner and thinner? Ing Xiaoxiao raised her head and looked at the sky. Her beautiful dress had long been tattered, but a girl who loved beauty didn't care about it. She started to look for Chu Feng again. She did not give up on this area because she knew that the great battle back then had changed the landscape. Perhaps Chu Feng had sunk into the ground nearby. In the surroundings, there were many mountain peaks that had been shattered, telling of the terror of the battle back then. The entire land was in such a state, and there were many regions that had been destroyed. On this day, she searched again as usual. When she walked down a newly discovered crack in the ground, her eyes suddenly widened in shock. She saw a tattered battle suit and bloodstains. It's his battle suit. She rushed downwards like a madman. She would never forget. Even though a long time had passed, her memory would never fade. She still remembered that during his final battle, he was wearing that moon-white battle suit. However now, it was covered in blood, long becoming a dark red color. Quite a bit of it was broken, just below. Chu Feng! Ing Xiaoxiao cried as she rushed to the bottom of the huge crack. She was afraid that reality would be too cruel, and that there was still no sign of Chu Feng. She was also afraid that when she found him, he would already be an ice-cold skeleton. She shed tears continuously and fell down. Finally, she saw that person lying quietly on the ground. He was motionless, and his arms and legs were a little deformed. He had been seriously injured during the great battle back then, and no one had ever helped him recover. Ing Xiaoxiao trembled as she picked up Chu Feng as though she had found the most precious treasure. She was unwilling to let go as she muttered, "You're not dead." "Definitely. I'll take you away and cure you." She was terrified and didn't even dare to check whether Chu Feng was alive or dead right away. She only wanted to believe that he was still alive. She only calmed down after a long time. She used her hand to touch his chest and used her soul light to touch his frontal bone. "Ah, he's really alive. That's great." She was like a young girl who wasn't familiar with worldly affairs. She laughed happily and cried joyfully as she skipped and jumped on the spot. Ing Xiaoxiao couldn't help but cry from the joy and emotion of going from losing to having it again. She had already prepared for the worst earlier on and thought that even if she found him, she could only find a damaged and ice-cold corpse or even just some broken bones. "Heavens, this is the first time I'm sincerely thanking you." Not long after, she discovered a stone jar in the crack in the ground. It was not far away and the jar was open. There were all kinds of rare and precious great medicines inside. She knew that this should be a life-saving medicine that Chu Feng had prepared for him to fight to the death, but it was a pity that the spiritual essence and medicinal properties contained within it had pretty much been lost. It looks like a great cosmos realm powerhouse circulated his breathing technique on his own and absorbed it unconsciously? Ing Xiaoxiao was suspicious. If this was the case, it was enough to show how serious Chu Feng's injuries were. His great cosmos realm corporeal body had already swallowed the essence of those rare and precious medicinal herbs on its own, but he still didn't wake up in the end. She continuously poured pure vitality into Chu Feng's body in an attempt to save him and wake him up. "Chu Feng, wake up!" After an unknown amount of time, Chu Feng heard a call. His soul gradually awakened in the dusky darkness and he saw light. After that, he saw a familiar but incomparably haggard face, Ing Xiaoxiao. Her silver hair had lost its luster and the dress she wore was also tattered. Her face was dirty and full of tears, but she was smiling when she saw him open his eyes. "You're finally awake." After a long while, Chu Feng struggled to sit up. His bones crackled as they all returned to their original positions. This time, he had suffered serious injuries, mainly to his soul. But in the end, the woman on the road of pollen helped him so he wasn't consigned to eternal damnation. Otherwise, many Tao ancestors would have attacked him together at the last moment and his body and soul would have certainly been annihilated. Later on, he discovered that it should be 9 Daoi, the rotten corpse, and the others risking their lives as they roared furiously and wanted to avenge him. In the end, everything before his eyes went black and he didn't know anything. "Xiaoxiao, don't cry." Chu Feng leaned against the wall of the large crevice and circulated his breathing technique. There weren't too many problems at the moment. After a long period of silence, his soul had more or less recovered. Suddenly, he saw the stone jar. Why was it still here? He clearly remembered that in order to save 9 Daoi, he had struck the stone jar away. He didn't know where it had fallen and why it was here. It shouldn't have fallen together with him. "Xiaoxiao, where's this stone jar?" Chu Feng asked her. "It was by your side when I found you." Chu Feng frowned. This matter was somewhat odd. Could it be that the jar really had its own consciousness and ran back on its own? The Celestial Emperor jar was just joking at first, but now its will had fully recovered. He pondered quietly. If the jar hadn't flown back on its own, then there seemed to be some power pulling karma? But he soon stopped thinking about it. There was still a silver-haired girl in front of him. Was she the one who dug him out from the large crevice? Had she been looking for him all this time? "Xiaoxiao, why are you here?" Chu Feng asked. I've been looking for you all this time. Ing Xiaoxiao couldn't help but cry. She hadn't given up all these years and had finally found Big Brother Chu Feng. Chu Feng's heart stirred. He recalled how he had shouted at the Dog Emperor to take care of those people during the great battle. In the end, someone ran out at the last moment and didn't leave with the resplendent light screen. It was Xiaoxiao. You stayed behind and didn't retreat with them? Chu Feng asked. Yes, I couldn't bear to part with you. Ing Xiaoxiao raised her head and said. She wasn't bashful nor did she speak in a low voice. Instead, she told him directly. Chu Feng felt ashamed in his heart and was even more moved. He didn't know what to say and finally asked her how many years had passed since the great battle and how was the outside world. When he found out that Xiaoxiao had searched every inch of this land by herself for him for 27 years, Chu Feng's nose turned sour. He stroked her messy silver hair and saw that her large eyes were bloodshot. It was obvious that she hadn't rested well, and that incomparably haggard face. The deepest part of his heart was touched. Someone had retreated from the path of escape without regard for her life and death, and had come to find him regardless of everything. How could he remain indifferent? Thank you, Xiaoxiao, but you shouldn't have come back. The Yang realm should be very dangerous now. Chu Feng seriously suspected that there was a mysterious power hiding him after he fell and allowing him to escape this calamity. Otherwise, not only would Xiaoxiao have found him long ago, but those Dao ancestors of the vile earth definitely wouldn't let him, the Fire Dao ancestor, off. Those people could clearly see where he was falling. I'm very willing to come back. I'm incomparably happy now. Ing Xiaoxiao wiped away her tears and laughed heartlessly. She was incomparably brilliant. What was going on in the outside world? Ing Xiaoxiao didn't know either because her area of activity was limited. She could only dig the earth continuously in this area and search for Chu Feng. At that time, Xiaoxiao had been unconscious for a very long time. She hadn't seen the final outcome of the battle for at least a month. After that, she didn't have the mood to understand the situation in the outside world. She only knew that 9 out of 10 rooms in the outside world were empty, and that the survivors were far from reaching 10%. After Chu Feng returned to the surface and changed his appearance, he walked on the earth with Xiaoxiao. He saw a scene of desolation and corpses everywhere. He sighed softly. The great sacrifice was most likely successful. It was very similar to how 80% of the living beings in high heaven's great sacrifice died in a single great sacrifice, and the remaining 20% were also annihilated in the following years. Would the living beings in the depths of the vile earth come to the Yang realm again? Following that, he frowned. There weren't too many strange substances left behind, but what about this world's spiritual qi? It was also sharply reduced and didn't even amount to 10% of the original. The end of days is coming? He frowned. In the next few months, Chu Feng brought Xiaoxiao around the world, but he didn't find any old friends. He didn't even see a single high-level evolver. Instead, he met cultivators with very low realms. In the end, they didn't know the outcome of the battle on the day of the great sacrifice because their cultivation was too low. At that time, they didn't even have the qualifications to watch the great battle of the Dao ancestors and couldn't observe the outer realm. What about those old friends? What happened to 9 Daoi and the rotten corpse? When he thought about this, he felt a wave of pain in his heart. He saw Gu Qing Dao collapse and the Dog Emperor explode in front of him, blood splattering everywhere. Even you yourself died. Where did you send those people you protected? Chu Feng muttered to himself. Not long after, Chu Feng realized a very serious problem. The entire world's spiritual qi was still continuously declining, and the Yang realm was about to dry up. This was an unimaginable rate of decline. This great world was no longer suitable for cultivation. If this continued, it would create an era of spirit extinction. Without spiritual qi, there would be no more cultivators in the future. 10 years later, Xiaoxiao couldn't fly anymore. The spiritual power in her body decreased with each use. 20 years later, Xiaoxiao started to like looking in the mirror because she discovered that her body was showing signs of losing its youth. She was afraid. She hugged one of Chu Feng's arms and said, "Will I become an old woman? If I'm really going to become old, please send me to a quiet little mountain village in advance. I don't want you to see me grow old. I want to leave quietly by myself." Obviously, she had long since realized that this world wasn't suitable for evolvers. It was very likely that no one could evolve in the future. However, Chu Feng's change was only subtle and far stronger than hers. He was still the same as before. "Xiao, I have a talisman here. The Dog Emperor gave me back then and told me to use it to escape." Chu Feng gave it to Xiao directly. He felt that this talisman could possibly send Xiao to a realm with spiritual qi. "Will you leave with me?" Xiao asked. "No, I want to become a mortal immortal in the age of Dharma ending. I want to comprehend the heart of an immortal king in this land of despair. I want to rise from these ruins and comprehend the truth of the Tao to achieve Tao ancestor realm. I'm not willing to be defeated like this. I'll go to the wretched earth for revenge." Chu Feng's voice was gloomy as he clenched his fists tightly. "I won't leave. I'll stay in this world to accompany you. Although I might not see you in the future, I'll be at ease knowing that you're still in this world." Xiao wanted Chu Feng to send her to a quiet little mountain village. She wanted to live the life of an ordinary person. When Chu Feng realized that all his persuasions were useless, he didn't persist because he was afraid that the Dog Emperor's talisman wouldn't be that effective. That was because even the dog had died and couldn't escape. There was still time for him to think of some other ways. After he left, Chu Feng discovered that Xiao stood outside that little mountain village for a very long time and didn't leave from the beginning until the end. He quietly went back and saw that her face was full of tears. She was currently muttering to herself softly, "I really can't bear for you to leave, but I also don't want you to see me grow old. I'm so sad. I'll silently wait for your news here by myself. I hope that you can become a mortal immortal in the future. I'll quietly leave this place before I grow old. I don't want you to see me grow old and how I look after I die. I hope that everything will be good for you in the future." Chu Feng couldn't bear it any longer. He walked out with large strides and embraced Xiao, whose face was full of tears yet carried astonishment and then incomparable joy. "You still haven't left. Do you still want to accompany me for a period of time? But it can't be too long. I'm going to grow old." "Nonsense. You don't even look like you're 30 years old. How can you say that you're going to grow old? But I only looked like I was 20 years old in the past. I'm aging very quickly now." Xiao was in low spirit. "I'm not leaving anymore. I'll stay and accompany you. What mortal immortal? If I have to escape even this and let you grow old by yourself in tears, what kind of immortal am I? I'm too useless." Not only did Chu Feng not want to leave, but he even decided to be together with Xiao and accompany her as she grew old. How could he not understand her intentions? She gave up her chance to escape and stayed behind to search for him incessantly. She was even crying and broken-hearted like this. How could he let her down? You're tuning in to the Phoenix Nights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.